Good evening. Once more into the breach, dear friends. So, we're back to this again, unfortunately. We won't be back at this for long. I think this will probably be the last time we look at one of Destiny's streams on this, but a couple of interesting conversations took place about this, and it's been interesting to see how different people respond to this issue. The Fuentes thing as a particular example of a general tendency towards a attitude of irresponsibility, towards how you use like a massive platform when you build yourself up as a political advocate of a certain stripe. And and then the post hoc justification for it afterwards and whether or not that actually holds water. The consensus so far is that it doesn't among people who have any reputation for, you know, giving a shit. We were originally just going to look at Rose's wrists, but I didn't realize that, I suppose recent frenemy Zanya is on here as well, so that should be interesting. We'll see how that conversation goes. This is somebody that we have been encountering more regularly, so it would be nice to see where we stand there. Hopefully I will not need to use this before too late. Alright, well, I suppose without further ado, let's get into it.
Count them up. I'm happy where my community is. I think I've done a really good job. I think I have a lot to show for my community. I might have, somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but of any like individual streamer, like non-podcaster.
I'm kind of baffled. This is a couple days old. I'm kind of baffled we're starting off with this, given the fact that he had to purge his community of people who were levying like fairly reasonable criticisms of him for like a really ridiculous position that he's taking, which has seen criticism very widely amongst people who have a reputation again for being reasonable. This is very strange.
Thing or whatever. I think I have the largest subreddit of anybody, the active subreddit. If anybody, PewDiePie? I don't know. PewDiePie Reddit.
What does PewDiePie's Reddit talk about?
3.6 million subs, if that number's not weird. Only 700 active people. XQC is big? Reddit.
Present Sunday check DMs about Mr. Girl.
Members.
Let's see this. This better be good, Leo. This better be good. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Apparently Mr. Girl mentioned me in his latest stream. Okay, maybe we'll check out that after this a little bit. Or maybe we'll check it out now. Why the hell not? Let's find that timestamp.
Did you watch the Rose wrist convo yesterday? I feel like that was more productive than you.
Oh, the link is, oh, this is pertaining to the Rose wrist convo. Oh, brilliant. This is actually topical. Fantastic. Let me turn the music down a little bit. I feel like it's going to get annoying. Oh, where's my mouse go? Where'd my mouse go? Damn it. There we go. Haha. God, that's so annoying. Okay. So, Mr. Girl, I suppose, watched the Rose wrist convo?
Did you watch the Rose wrist convo yesterday? I feel like that was more productive than yours. Yeah. If you're a fan of Destiny, I'm sure you did feel it was more productive. The fact is that Rose wrist kind of got rolled in that conversation.
Oh, did he? That's a shame. I was hoping he would redeem himself. Damn. Oh well, he's young. He can recover. That's a damn shame. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like Rose wrist one bit, but I was hoping he'd do well. I think when it comes to more serious stuff like this, we need to be, to the extent that we can be, more or less on the same side. I'm not even going after Mr. Girl right now, because he's just on the right side of this. Granted, he's on the right side of a thing that if it prevails would set a precedent that would exclude him, but that is unfortunate.
He did not call out many things that Steven did in that conversation, and I was furiously DMing him throughout the conversation, but like me, he didn't read them till afterward, and I do the same thing. If I'm arguing with somebody and I see President Sunday blowing up my DMs, I'm like, all right, motherfucker, I got this. And then sometimes afterward I look and I'm like, yeah, that was actually good. I probably should have read that. But yeah, Rose wrist. Rose wrist admires Destiny.
That was unexpected. I thought he'd be more negatively disposed to me than that.
And from now on, Steven is Destiny. I'm getting confused. I try to say Destiny when I'm talking about him, and Steven when I'm talking to him, but it's weird. Rose wrist admires Steven, and that makes it hard. Things like that, things like friendship, make it hard to really push back effectively. Yeah. So, Rose is a good thing. Rolled wrists. No, he's good. He's good. He didn't get completely rolled, but he let some things happen in the conversation that I really don't think he should have let happen. Like when Steven says, is it an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory if Jews really do control everything? What if he's right? I think that just made me think, like, Stephen's definition of Nazi. The first is engages in anti-Semitic conspiratorial thinking, and the implication being that well, if they're right, then they're not Nazis, and I just think that's a very inherently anti-Semitic framing of the definition almost. So I would have pushed back against it. That's kind of the main thing. There were a bunch of other little things I would have hit the buzzer on. But yeah, I'm sure it looked. See, this is the thing. I feel that I'm being cast as I'm being put in a bind, where if I call out anything Steven is doing in the meta conversation, if I start a meta conversation, I say, hey, look at that maneuver you just did. Then it's like, well, why is Mr. Girl always talking about the meta conversation? Why can't he just stick to the topic? But if I feel like Steven is changing the topic, I kind of have to point that out, right? And if I feel like he does it 500 times, I kind of have to point it out 500 times.
Max was correct on that, unfortunately. Like Mr. Steven. Destiny was putting up red herring after red herring. It was actually bizarre to see. Max would bring up a point, Destiny would waffle on about some tangent, and then would try to reframe the point as being something categorically different and absurd. But every point that Mr. Girl was making was completely reasonable. Now, once again, like, I've fielded similar arguments against the platforming of Max, so I mean, it's unfortunate. Again, like, I don't like that we're my general inclination is to actually try to be friendly with people. It's why I tend to, like, get along really well even after I've been really harsh with someone once they are willing to talk. And that's actually a weakness, because sometimes I back down when I shouldn't. And I try to avoid that too. And that's actually harder, I think, than staying. That's harder than being generous, honestly. But like, if your friends are doing something really bad, or if people you want to be friends with, or want to respect, or want to like, are doing something really bad, and they're refusing to stop or take seriously even just addresses to that thing that you're doing really bad. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair to say that Mr. Girl doesn't take them seriously, but if they're continuous, then you're also being the enemy of the people that they're harming by being their friend. So that puts you into, like, a tough spot if that's what you want to do. So it's a shame. It's a damn shame. I'm going to turn the AC on. It's getting quite hot in here. It's a eternal contradiction of this building. It's either too cold to not wear a cardigan or a sweater or something, or it's too hot to, and there's no in between. So I have the AC running, and the air is freezing, but I'm warm. And that's how we do it. I found that him and Sam Hyde are friends also because they both hate Hassan. Who, him and Destiny and Mr. Girl, or Mr. Girl and Sam Hyde? Sorry, Destiny and Sam Hyde, or Mr. Girl and Sam Hyde? Huh.
What's the alternative? Just to let him do it? And, like, as I said at the end of my last conversation with Steven, I probably was ascribing too much malice to it. It does feel like there's a lot.
I don't think so. I think he was on point. I think he was dead on point there. If anything, I think his own friendship with Steven tends him towards. I think there's two not cross pressures, but there's two pressures on Mr. Girl that prevent him from seeing Steven for what he actually is and what he's actually doing, and not seeing him from like following through on what he perceives. Because I think he was correct when he perceived it in the middle of that conversation. One is his career success is tied to his engagement with Steven. If Steven cuts him off, he loses a ton of exposure. and just a ton of relevance really quickly. Maybe not. Like maybe he moves somewhere else, or maybe just he takes a bunch of Steven's audience with him. I don't know, but I suspect that's what he perceives, consciously or unconsciously. And then the second is, of course, he seems to. We can never tell if people are being truthful about this, but he seems to actually regard Steven as a friend, like as like a friend, which I don't think Steven sees Mr. Girl as. I'd find that very surprising if he did. But you know, there's like these emotional pressures to not A, bite the hand that feeds you, and B, like kick somebody you want to be close with, you know?
Lack of trust or faith in me as an interlocutor to respond in good faith, and to have, it's like if he thinks I'm being bad faith, then I think that amounts to him being bad faith, basically, if he's like preemptively defending himself. So I don't know what it is, but it feels like really hard to keep the conversation on track. And then, but if I don't know, yeah, I'm gonna look like a crazy person screaming about stuff that sounds like I'm making it up, and changing the subject to the conversation itself. If I think the other person's being evasive, and like I think it's just gonna be up to you to track the conversation and decide for yourself. Am I being manipulative and playing mind games and gaslighting, or am I calling out what I see as obfuscation? I get that that's what it's going to look like. If
The general impression that I'm getting is that Destiny is a little bit too drunk off of his recent success, and he's not realizing that he's alienating a lot of his following, like a lot of them. Because what's crucial to remember here is that he's not just turning on Mr. Girl, and he's not just fighting with like these various online figures. He's also really hammering down on just people who are making really good faith and often really mildly stated criticisms or inquiries about what it is that he thinks he's doing with Nick Fuentes. And he's not giving good reasons for it. He's demonstrating a general contempt for those people. He thinks they're bugs. That's not going to sit well, even with the audience that isn't directly affected by that, because now they're thinking, oh, well, you hate us then. Because he does. Like, nobody who treats their following like that brazenly, and that lazily, because he's not even coherent. He's not, like, planning any of this through. He's not bothering to have explanations for what he's doing. He's just doing it and saying fuck you to people who are like, hey, hang on, we followed you for a long time. What are you doing? This seems to go against, like, what we thought were your principles or whatever. Or at the very least, like what we thought was your mission. He'll go, oh, fuck you. That's like, he'll say that's autistic or whatever. And then he'll toss them out like garbage. And then you see how he treats people who looked like his friends. Even his family. And you're like, wow, this is actually kind of gross. This guy's like sort of personable and kind of chill on one level, but on the other, like, that's masking over something really dark. And most decent people, and I think like DGG, as it's called, gets a unfair bad rap because of a few. I mean, granted, a large vocal minority, but because of a loud and insufferable minority. But there are a lot of decent people there who legitimately think that there's, like, a heart to the thing. And I think they're becoming disillusioned with that. One reason is that Destiny thinks he's doing the very thing BreadTube failed to do by de-radicalizing the right. Yeah, but BreadTube never aspired to de-radicalize the right. BreadTube was never even an organized thing. BreadTube was a couple of, video essayists who found success because they were giving pushback on things that didn't have a lot of representation on this platform. And that's basically it. People like Vosh weren't a part of BreadTube. That's an entirely different thing that popped up a little bit later. BreadTube was video essays. Back in the day when streaming wasn't the major thing, it was Sargon of Akkad with his 10-minute, then 20-minute, then 30-minute, then hour-long, then eventually live-streamed, exposés on why people hate feminism and stuff like that, and then people would make video essays responding to that, and you'd have sort of a back and forth going on. It'd be, you could get a lot more success doing that back then. Then people discovered streaming, and it's like, it's a lot lower effort. You can produce a lot more spontaneous content. It's much easier to generate, like, really lucrative parasocial relationships that way. Unfortunately, that is the business. I think people should try to offset that as much as possible, or at the very least treat that role with responsibility, since it's somewhat inevitable at some point. Like, again, you have to be really careful. When Mr. Girl's looking at the camera, or when I'm looking at the camera, I don't see faces, and I don't see individuals, and I barely even see names. I see my screen, which doesn't even have your chat on it. I'm looking at a phone for my chat right here. I see a screen, I see a camera, and I'm looking at the camera to gesticulate at you, not to look at you. So I'm communicating this way, but I'm not looking at you. If I'm looking at you, technically I'm looking down here. So when you see me looking down here, I'm actually paying attention to what you're saying. That's when I'm looking at you. Right now, I'm not looking at you. But given that inevitably that happens because you're sort of half and half in conversation with somebody who's doing that, I think it's important to treat that with a certain level of responsibility. You are taking up people's time because of their perception of something that you are, especially if you're engaging in some kind of like political discourse or whatever, and there are like real consequences for how you do this, and you can affect people's real world decision making by what you do. I think it's actually really important to treat this with a certain level of gravity. Oddly enough, I think Mr. Girl actually does kind of do that. I don't think Destiny does that at all, and I think he's being brazen about it to the point where he looks like he hates the people who follow him, which is just a terrible look. And I don't think he has the organ anymore to recognize that that's the case. Now, maybe he doesn't need to have one anymore, and that's a scary thought. Like, I think these people eventually kind of turn into zombies, and they don't realize when the switch is taking place. But yeah.
Especially if you already don't like me. From the south side.
Also, the worst thing about seeing this, you can't see this because it's cut off on my side. I'm seeing super chats up here, and I'm like, oh, they're Mr. Girls. Okay, fine. I see how it is.
What do you mean by X was annoying as fuck from Destiny? What do you think of Destiny calling AOC a commie? More language games?
By the way, thank you, Al, for the 99 cents.
I don't know. That's a question for him. I don't want to try to guess what he's thinking. I want to talk about like what is happening.
Is this going to be about Rose Wrist eventually? It was a little bit just now. I'm just seeing if this continues anywhere.
After he defined Nazi, this is from Tahini, said Nick didn't fit it, and if he did fit it, he wouldn't have had him on his stream so casually. What's your issue now, Max? My first issue is that it shouldn't take 3-4 hour conversations to get that answer. It shouldn't take banning dozens of people from your subreddit to have this conversation. In the process of doing those things, you are running huge amounts of interference for Nick. So even if you did land on Nick isn't a Nazi, the fact that it takes 12 hours to get an answer to that question, and then to have to fight through this like.
Also, to be clear, like when Destiny says Nick isn't a Nazi, he's not saying, "Oh, Nick's actually militant." No, he's saying Nick's a more general fascist who just doesn't fit like a hyper-rigid definition of a member of the Nazi party, really. Because that's what's strange about it, because he'll willingly allow him to be described as a fascist with potentially genocidal tendencies, who's a racist and transphobe, etc., etc., etc. And then well, okay, does that taste better going down? Like, we're very concerned about specificity all of a sudden when it comes with the word Nazi. And I think the reason why is because people initially criticized Destiny for, again, like, abetting a Nazi, or helping a Nazi grow his platform, or helping a Nazi, make himself seem more pleasant to a general audience. And so he's got this mega-brained idea that if he can convince you that, no, Nick's not technically a Nazi, or that the word Nazi has no meaning, that, oh, he's won. But he hasn't, because that list of things that's being packed in there, which is the impetus for calling him a Nazi in the first place, he still fucking conceded those. Chud Logic shouldn't be in those convos anymore. I'm frustrated with Chud Logic. I really am. I think he's a good person at heart. I actually do. But for whatever reason, he's lost his way. Like, he used to actually be for something, and he would have, like, an actual politics that mattered, and he had values, and he had things, and he would do things to the end of facilitating, like, higher quality discourse between people who are actually thoughtful about these things. And then recently he's gotten in with this DK goon, and it's just trash. It's just endless trash. And everybody sees it. It's embarrassing. And I feel bad for him in a way, because it's like, I get it. On the one hand, it's like probably more money than you've ever had before, and doing something you ostensibly love. But then what is it that you love at this point? It seems like he's just kind of like barely active during these extended conversations that go for upwards of 5 hours a day, just watching confused, angry people abuse each other. And then he has some deranged cretin make a mockery of them afterwards on his YouTube channel. It's pathetic. He wasn't a dumpster diver before. I really regret this direction he's gone in. Hopefully can have an arc like Dylan. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, Chud could do something, like, really meaningful, and at this juncture, he's not even... Like, he has... I think he has it in his head that, you know, he's just being realistic about the nature of what's going on here, and he's just being, like, a savvy businessman, but he's really not. There's no science behind what he's doing. There's nothing that says that what he's doing works over something else. He's been informed by people who were largely successful as a result of circumstance and placement and deeply unhealthy habits, which is the case with Steven. That being just a grisly, exploitative monstrosity is the way to go. But it's like, there were easier ways to grift if that was your hustle. Like, why... Like, go into sales, just like, go into any other number of things. Instead, it's like 8 hours a day of constant pressure, of having people constantly on your case, and just dealing with the worst humans imaginable all the time. Like, it's awful. Oh, I asked DK on stream and suddenly he went silent. That was funny.
Thicket of, like, well, why do we need to use that word? What's so important about that word anyway? Why does it matter? What does the word even mean? What do words mean at all? Nothing means anything.
Present Sunday check DMs. Oh, once again. So needy. Interesting. That's interesting. I would like more details on that. I can't show you on screen, unfortunately. But I got some interesting information pertaining to that, so that's good. Thank you.
The fact that I would have to push so hard for so long, like for an entire week, to get there is the exact kind of blurry... So my thesis here is, as I said, if you allow Nick to define himself as sort of a Nazi, then he gets the best of both worlds. He gets to be a Nazi and attract a Nazi following and advance a Nazi...
Chud seems to have taken the attitude that online political content is so inconsequential he can just resort to the lowest common denominator content. Yeah, but that's the thing, though, right? Like, what does that say about you as a person if that's not what you do instead? Like, presumably, you were a political person in the first place because you wanted to affect something. Like, let's entertain this hypothesis for a second, okay? Like, online politics is so inconsequential. What the fuck are you talking about? We're actually going to go on to a research arc soon where we're looking into issues surrounding online, or not online, well, online too, but political canvassing generally. You know what you can't do anymore? Going door to door is extremely difficult because people are hostile to canvassers like they've never been before. You can't, call centers are hooped because their calls are being blocked, like almost universally. So how do you proselytize? I have a strong feeling the internet's going to be a major factor, and conversations like this are going to be pivotal. Not just in this sphere, like more broadly, but pivotal across the board. Like, it may be the case that explicitly political content by itself is less effective, but that may have trickle-down effects in like a wide array of areas that have a much broader audience. For example, we may not necessarily know who these $1 million subscribed normie channels watch for their politics. I know that Gideon, who has, I think, like a couple million, I think at least 1 million, maybe more. I think he has like 6 million, actually. Am I crazy? Gideon, who has like several million subscribers, ballparking it, was talking to Destiny during his conversation with Mr. Girl. That's a lot of reach. 6 million? That's a lot.
The pro-genocide, anti-Jew, racist, fascist agenda. But he also gets the plausible deniability of, like, it's just jokes, bro. Like last month, or 4 months ago, Fuentes said his legacy is going to be Hitler 2, 3, and 4. And he wasn't joking. He was, like, angry when he said it. But when you question...
I think it's like I think on the one hand it wasn't serious in the sense that he was literally saying that, but I think it does demonstrate like his general orientation, which is pure hostility to the people that Hitler would have been a mortal danger to, which I suppose is everybody. But like that's a problem. What it's emblematic of is the political situation that he is advocating for. Sorry, I'm touching my nose constantly. There's forest fires everywhere, so I'm like, ugh. The political situation that he's advocating for is one in which a great number of people who have relatively recently come to be treated with an unprecedented degree of respect in, I guess for lack of a suitable alternative, like in the Western democracy, so to speak. He wants them deprived and put into a box. That's on the kinder end of things for him. So it's not so much that he's literally going to be Hitler 2 and 3. It's that insofar as it is in Nick's capacity to be that in his own sphere, he will be that, which is bad. You don't want that. Also because, among other things, like, look, all of this is very new. Our new attitudes towards trans and gay acceptance, etc., etc. I mean, even the fact that we still have those in such close juxtaposition. That was all won very recently. It can go away. That can all be taken. There is no cosmic law that says that we are on a permanent forward trajectory. We can go back. We can go back and we can lose the conditions forever that allowed us to go forward in the first place. I don't think it's plausible, but the point... I don't think it's likely, rather, not plausible. It's perfectly plausible. But the point is, like, there are actually very high stakes here. Maybe Nick Fuentes won't become a world leader at any point. I rather suspect he won't. But effectively allowing that person to reach a broader audience and to normalize himself will make it so that there are more people like him. He will normalize statistically as well as, in terms of how people perceive him. That's a real danger. Sneeko has an audience again in the millions. He is now chumming it up with Nick Fuentes. It's out of Destiny's hands at this point. Like, that's, again, like, to repeat what I've been saying ad nauseum for the last few streams. The really sad thing about this is that up until this point, we were talking about Steven as if he had the capacity to do good. People were criticizing him for platforming Nick Fuentes in this particular kind of irresponsible way, because it gave him the opportunity to expand his reach, to give him a new lease on life on this mainstream platform, from which he had been effectively removed. Even in the right, he had been a negligible element for some time now, since, like, even at January 6th, nobody really cared about him until it was like, oh yeah, that guy. That's no longer the case. And at this point, like, before, people were criticizing Steven precisely because they had a certain level of respect for him. They were hostile to him for sure, but the implication was like, Steven, you should be better than this. We expect more from you. Not anymore, of course. But then that was the case. But now, cat's out of the bag. You can't undo this. Now he's, by giving him that lease on life, he may have directly facilitated, or even indirectly, and that's bad enough. He quite likely, rather, facilitated Nick getting an audience superior eventually to Stevens. Destiny may be the small fry compared to Nick Fuentes in the future. Who knows? He certainly is with respect to Sneeko. So Destiny may not be he may not be relevant anymore. Like he's just going to be an orbiter himself. Destiny will deny any involvement. Yeah, but he has no credibility. Who the fuck cares what Destiny says anymore?
Him on it, he'll say, I'm sure he'll say he was joking, or he'll say it was some other part of Hitler's legacy. And he consistently does this, and we also have seen a clip of him saying, "I'm going to hide my Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism in jokes." So he gets to have it both ways. He gets to say, and Stephen does the same thing with.
Okay, so I'm going to come clean. So I've recently attempted to reach out. Last stream, I was actually messaging Mr. Girl, and I asked him to come on because I didn't want to like interrogate him or anything. I just wanted to get his sense of like where the miscommunications were happening. So basically what he's explaining now, where the miscommunications were happening with Destiny, because here's where I'm on the fence with Mr. Girl. Not even on the fence, just kind of torn. Again, he is engaging in things that I have a tremendous amount of issue with. Like, tremendous. I don't think it's as bad as what Destiny's doing with Nick. There is a discrete case involving his treatment of his girlfriend publicly that I take significant issue with. That being said, everything I'm seeing here, because I don't think Mr. Girl is a Machiavellian mastermind. I think his Vosh conversation illustrates that very adequately. I think he is someone with a conscience. I think it is twisted. I think he has some really fucked up ideas about things, and I think he hasn't thought through things as well as he thinks he has. And I think he lets the aesthetic of being thoughtful override any actual thought on a lot of very serious issues. However, I legitimately think after watching these interactions that he actually does care. So, here's my problem. I can't let that other thing rest, so I don't know what to do. So my policy right now is, well, this is an issue. I'm going to leave that, just for now. I think I've done as much as I can on that front, anyways. But I'm not going to stop him from doing a good thing, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not, as if I could. I'm not going to attempt to interfere with somebody with some pull in Destiny's sort of inner circle, giving him actual pushback that he needs, that is actually good. So I don't know. I don't know. It's tricky. A part of me wonders if it's actually possible to talk him out of some of these positions. Because that's something I haven't tried to do. I've tried to lay bare with an aim to, like, just making very plainly clear how bad some of his positions are and how bad some of the things he engages in are. Sorry, I'm very tired. But I haven't actually tried to talk him out of it. So I need to think about that. Because by the same token, I'm not so much worried about being a hypocrite. I'm worried about doing what Destiny is doing. Not in the sense that I'd be exposing Mr. Girl to a larger audience, but that handshake with the devil, that's what I don't want to do. I'm not saying Mr. Girl is the devil, but you know what I mean. So, I think Mr. Girl is being genuine for the reason that he's doing things that he could not predict, or I don't believe he could predict are advantageous. He's also cynical enough and suspicious enough that I know he also is capable of preempting things in a very intelligent and far-seeing way. And that's one of those things where it's very difficult to gauge somebody. All you know is that they are smart and they have success. However, that doesn't mean that they're forward thinking or that they're planning very well, because Destiny is also smart and has success. He doesn't act smart. He's not being smart. He doesn't have to be smart, which is really dangerous. Because at that point you've lost touch. Like if you're not like aggressively trying to ground yourself, and he's not, then you're crazy. You can't adjust yourself to the world again because you're lost. So I have to think that through. Because by the same token, I cannot say about Mr. Girl's audience things that I can say about Destiny's generally. At the very least, like the vocal representatives. Because of course, like Destiny's audience is large. When you say that DGG is bad, it's like, well, I'm in Destiny's Discord, right? So I can't say that, obviously. Or maybe I can and I should. But like generally, Mr. Girl's audience it's a mix. Like there are some people I don't respect, but I see a lot of really thoughtful people as well. They often, again, have really fucked up opinions on things and positions on things, but they're genuine. And it's important to remember that our positions on things that we regard as good, they are also conditioned by our history, both at a personal level and more broadly. So, it's tricky. It seems like he feels super emotionally isolated, doesn't justify anything, but it's almost like he secures acceptance at the lowest ethical standards with people. Who are we talking about, Mr. Girl or Destiny? I don't know if Mr. Girl secures acceptance at the lowest ethical standard. I do think he, at least until recently, very recently, because I was complaining about this with the stupid hug box thing that he was doing in the Chud Logic and Destiny debate, which he abandoned for the more recent ones. I do think he has a history of going out of his way to try and basically emotionally coerce a kind of softness towards him, specifically in front of an audience, which is exactly, because again, and Chud pointed this out, like he's supposed to be like someone trained in psychology to a certain extent, or some psychiatry or something. One of the things that you absolutely do not do if you're trying to control for aggravating factors in a conversation where you want clarity and emotional openness is you do not do so in front of a massive audience of strangers who want to eat at least a third of the participants of the conversation alive. I'm not going to watch the whole video, Leo. Here, give me a quick second. I'm going to be right back. I just need to deal with something. Sorry about that. The smoke is like irritating my nose like nothing else. It's like this insane itch at the tip of it for some reason. It's still not gone, so this is gonna kind of suck a bit, but that's fine. Okay, enough about Mr. Girl. And we'll skip Zonya. I don't know how Rose did. Let's see, where does it start? God, his hair is big. That must be uncomfortable.
A lot of people, because they see how crazy the other response is. Look at all these people saying they don't even think it's okay to be white. A guy in the middle or an unconverted guy might look and be like, yeah, those people are fucking insane. And then you start getting a little bit closer to that, and it's like, I think it is okay to be white, blah, blah, blah. And now they've got like so much more cover. And that was my issue with Max's conversation. He keeps saying, you're obfuscating, you're participating. The obfuscation is already happening. I'm trying to cut through it. Like, the dog whistling isn't the problem. It's the people that jump at the dog whistling. That's the people that give the cover. That's what fucks everything up. And people know this. 4chan knows this. When they're making these like types of fucking memes, that it's okay to be white shit, they're not doing it because they're like, this is such a high level fucking blah blah. They're doing this like, I wonder how fucking retarded it would be if somebody actually attacked the statement, it's okay to be white. I wonder if people would actually be stupid enough to jump and fight over that. And they
It's okay to be white isn't a dog whistle. It's okay to be white is it's signaling a general opposition towards a perceived imbalance in terms of how different ethnic groups are treated, but it's coming from a place that regards any sort of language about the history of why that is a thing that needs to be addressed as something, you know, worthy of hostility, which again, like, signals additional content about where you're coming from saying that. Because again, like, as Destiny said, like, I mean, there are indeed people who do indeed say, in all seriousness, that, like, you are a bad person if you have pale skin, or you are guilty or unworthy of life if you have pale skin. But generally, the stance isn't that. It's that, why are you saying that in response to this in particular? And then they'll preempt what the answer to that is, and then they'll respond with hostility, justifiably so. But it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like the All Lives Matter thing. Like, the Black Lives Matter slogan is a retort to the unspoken but practically true phrase that Black Lives don't matter. But it's borne out by how we treat Black communities, or how Black communities are, you know, how their concerns are generally regarded. And you could extend this out. Like, there's almost no concern whatsoever in practice for Indigenous lives in Canada, say. To retort to that statement that all lives matter is, first of all, to state the obvious, because the strength of the phrase Black Lives Matter is specifically comes from the fact that, hey, all lives matter, including Black lives. Like, these people matter in a positive sense. It's not saying other people don't matter. They're already treated as if they don't matter in a very broad and very serious way. And so they're making a critique of that. When you say all lives matter in return, what you're effectively doing is saying, hey, shut up. Right? Hey, shut up, you can lie in the bed other people made for you. It's you don't have, you know, things are fine for us, why isn't that good enough for you? The irony, of course, is that it's not fine for practically anybody, but
They did! People did fight over that. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
No, I agree, though.
oh, this is still Zonya. Okay, I want... Sorry, Zonya. I want to listen to Rose.
That not really being a...
That's still Zonya.
Why don't you refine the kryptonite on world? Because I don't want to bring 50 million fucking machines to do it over here. Rage shitter.
What the hell is he talking about? Oh, Factorio, I see. Alright, we've, been putting this off long enough.
Hello?
Hi. Okay, you should have perms, so you can just join this whenever. Yeah.
Okay. Which one is this? Let me see. I haven't been in your server a lot. Is this Nathan's room? Is that what we're in? Yeah. No, we're in Destiny's room. Okay.
True.
All right. So, okay. Do we want to start with the easy part, or the part that might be a bit more inflammatory? What do we want to start with?
Whatever you want to. It's your call right now. Okay. So you
Okay.
get to be the one. Wait, let me use the restroom real quick, okay?
All right, sounds good. Let me open GGG chat so I can look at you guys. What's up? Big screen. Pop out. Can you guys even hear me? Am I on stream, like audio? I am. Okay, let's go. Hello, Burn Bridge. We'll see. I don't think so. I don't think that there should be a reason to. Say. Oh, nice try. Okay, nice try. Oh, I should turn on my camera. Is that a thing we can do in this room? Video. Okay, I'm on video. Let's go. I heard. I didn't say, guys. I didn't say you can hear you. Well, too bad. Okay. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll like occasionally, like at the start of the conversation.
By the way, guys, I heard some people complaining the other day about my playing Quake like an old man. I'm playing it without sound for your sake. Be grateful.
I'll drop an O, and then like, you know, once we're in a little bit, I'll drop an ob, and then like oba, and then we can like build up to it throughout the entire thing. You know, delayed gratification. We'll figure it out. But yeah. Let's see. Type in chat so we can tag you. Type. I might not log. I'm probably not gonna. We're gonna be logged in. I'm not logged in. Let's go. Let me fix this. Rose wrist. That's me. Hi. There you go. I wrote a hi. Hello. Yi or Pepe. It just feels like, I don't know. Pepe just has so much more variation, you know. Like Yi. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know enough about Yi. Okay, but it just seems like there's only one Yi emote now, or is there more than one Yi?
What are we talking about right now?
Yi versus Pepe.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Maybe I give a. Is there only one Yi emote, or am I mistaken?
Oh, you're asking me? There's a ton of different
Oh no, there's two. Oh, there's more than one Yi. Okay, maybe I'll have to do more research before
You guys are just real shit at repping their emotes, okay? But they did win the last Olympics, so.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, yeah, I've never seen any other one than the default Yi, so I'll do some more research and then we'll see what happens. Okay, we can start with this actually. So I dropped the document in your Reddit a few days ago, and from what I understand, a lot of people brought it up. Now I just want to ask you, did you recognize that document?
I'm guessing it came from our 2v2 debate.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that the 2v2 debate of the document that you read multiple times and you reviewed, right? Okay, excellent. Okay. So the first thing, I guess we can start with something simple, okay? So we can start with the first of all, tips out, because we're gonna be talking about debate theory, okay?
Tipping! I am tipping hard. Yes.
Exactly. So this is a little bit of, it's probably a very fundamental theory that I learned when I did like high school debate.
Okay.
But I think that the words are actually pretty, the concepts are actually pretty relevant.
Sure.
So beyond like the premise like conclusion, like that type of thing of argumentation, there's another thing which has more to do with like the rhetoric of delivering an argument more than necessarily like its validity or its soundness.
Yeah.
And two elements there are the mechanistic elements of the argument and then an impact part of the argument. So when I say mechanization, I essentially mean that this is when you explain how your argument works. You explain that this is something that logically follows. You prove why something is like true or not true. It's the actual thing that talks about like, what are you trying to demonstrate? What are you trying to prove?
Okay.
And I think you do this really well. And I think that that's one of the major things that a lot of people might forego, and they might go just straight up for the latter part of this, which is impact. And the part of this is past demonstrating and doing the mechanization for your argument. You explain the importance of what you just explained, and you demonstrate essentially like the broader societal impact in that sense. So for like an example of this, I could just ask you this. So why is, for example, a false belief in the Jewish question bad to hold?
Okay. Since we're having a very formal conversation, I need to ask what you mean when you say bad.
What parts of this do you find to be what consequences of holding this belief do you find to be like morally bad consequences, like things you would like to avoid? What are the negative externalities of holding the belief that like the Jewish question is real?
Okay, I'm just gonna call this obfuscation because that's what everybody says. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently I'm obfuscating everything now. When you ask me why are Jewish conspiracy things bad, there are a couple of different levels that I'll view that on. So
Okay.
epistemically, I would say that Jewish conspiracies are bad because typically, in order to believe in them, you have to be running down very irrational trains of thought. You're either not asking for or looking for the right evidence for a belief, or you're falling into certain cognitive pitfalls to believe certain things that you shouldn't be. Or there's a whole host of other types of reasons. You're getting your truth from bad sources, so you have an inability to analyze evidence correctly, or you're not analyzing evidence, you're just taking descriptive statements to be true at face value from other people you agree with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So epistemically, when you say, why are Jewish conspiracies bad? That'd be one thing I would say. Now, if you want to ask a further question, well, why is it bad to believe different things on an epistemic level, then I would say, well, that's bad because if you're susceptible to bad ideas here, you're susceptible to bad ideas anywhere. And those types of bad thoughts, those incongruent epistemic beliefs are going to make it impossible for two sound minds to agree on things that are descriptively true, right? Like whether or not Jewish people are good or bad can be an...
I have to listen to this again. He lost me. Alright, looks like we're back. That was really frustrating.
And I think that that's one of the major things that a lot of people might forego, and they might go just straight up for the latter part of this, which is impact. And the part of this is past demonstrating and doing the mechanization for your argument. You explain the importance of what you just explained, and you demonstrate essentially like the broader societal impact in that sense. So for like an example of this, I could just ask you this. So why is, for example, a false belief in the Jewish question bad to hold?
That's such a... I hate how he phrases this. Like, it's so freaking confusing. Why is a false... No, looks like we're back. I need to figure out what the hell's going on here. Because my connection is solid. Like, really solid. I pay through the nose for it. My hardware is really good. And for whatever reason, OBS just drops it, and I don't know why. I wonder if it's a priority issue. That might be it. Yeah, maybe. Although with Windows 10 you can't seem to change the priorities of things like you could in Windows 7. Which is odd. What if I... I don't know. Anyways, we're back, so we'll run with it for now. And pray, I suppose.
A very formal conversation. I need to ask what you mean when you say bad.
What parts of this do you find to be what consequences of holding this belief do you find to be like morally bad consequences, like things you would like to avoid? What are the negative externalities of holding the belief that like the Jewish question is real?
Okay, I'm just gonna call this obfuscation because that's what everybody says. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently I'm obfuscating everything now. When you ask me why are Jewish conspiracy things bad, there are a couple of different levels that I'll view that on. So epistemically, I would say that Jewish conspiracies are bad because typically in order to believe in them, you have to be running down very irrational trains of thought. You're either not asking for or looking for the right evidence for a belief, or you're falling into certain cognitive pitfalls to believe certain things that you shouldn't be, or there's a whole host of other types of reasons. You're getting.
But why is it bad to be irrational? Like, you can't just say that. You can't just insist that, oh, it's because it's irrational to believe in this. Like, that doesn't. So what? It may be the case that certain irrational beliefs are conditions of survival. Like we don't really have an indefinite future as a species, yet a condition of our species surviving for a greater length of time than a shorter one seems to be that we need to plan for the future and basically treat ourselves as if we can live for a very long time and have a future to invest in beyond like our own individual experience of the world.
Your truth from bad sources, so you have an inability to analyze evidence correctly, or you're not analyzing evidence, you're just taking descriptive statements to be true at face value from other people who agree with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So epistemically, when you say, why are Jewish conspiracies bad, that'd be one thing I would say. Now, if you want to ask a further question, well, why is it bad to believe different things on an epistemic level, then I would say, well, that's bad because if you're susceptible to bad ideas here, you're susceptible to bad ideas anywhere, and those types of bad thoughts, those incongruent epistemic beliefs, are going to make it impossible for two sound minds to agree on things that are descriptively true, right? Like, whether or not Jewish people are good or bad can be an ethics debate, but whether or not Jewish people are involved in a conspiracy ought to be something that two reasonable minds should agree on. So on an epistemic level, that's why it's bad. On a moral or ethical level, when you say, why are believing in Jewish conspiracies bad? Well, if they're true, it's not really bad to believe in them. But if they're bad, it's bad to believe in them. Because if you think that a group of people is conspiring against our people, morally, the road that is a very short walk down to is we ought to be able to take some sort of self-defensive action against that group of people. So it invites or even begs violence or some other sort of retribution towards that group. So Jewish conspiracies are bad because to believe in them requires poor epistemic grounding, and they're bad because the ethical arguments past believing that Jewish conspiracies are real lead us down paths of violence or violent retribution or whatever that, or real weird political things or state violence that I don't agree with and I think are bad.
These are contradictory criteria, though. Like you're fetishizing the rational on the one side, and then on the other you're referring solely to the consequences. That doesn't follow. Like how about this? Just say, well, we know it's false, and it tends to these negative outcomes, which we can recognize as negative on all of these different ethical theories, or even if you defy the validity of ethical theories categorically, they are hostile to our way of life. They are toxic to the kinds of communities that we want, even if we just want them by choice and by preference, and that's it. And we don't think that there's anything binding about morality or ethics or whatever. Right? Like,
that would be my full answer to that question.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think that's a really good answer.
Okay.
So now, what does this have to do
why
with
do you
what
think
I
it's a really
explained
good
previously?
answer?
Well, the first thing you...
What is Rose Risk's education? Does anybody know? Like, he's very young, so he must be just out of high school, but like, what's his background? I don't know why he would just accept that answer.
You mentioned when you talked about the issues with epistemics and with grounding your beliefs in reality and essentially believing in things that can't be verified and checked by other people, and you can't actually build like a sound and good fundamental like reality that you can then base your worldview off of and build off of. That has to do a lot with the mechanization, right? Because there you're essentially explaining how, if in an argument against a Jewish question, why it doesn't hold up, why there's flaws in this and this, the evidence is insufficient, whatever, yada yada yada.
You mentioned high school debate team. Debate teams are a mistake.
Up until perpetuity. But unless you also talk about like the impact, unless you also make the argument that, okay, so this is why the belief is like an incorrect belief to have. It's like it doesn't hold up. It doesn't seem to be reflective of what's actually going on in the real world. Unless you also be like, and furthermore, this belief also contributes to an environment where you're essentially falsely identifying whatever you want to call Jewish people, probably an ethnic group in this case, for being responsible for a wide range of social ills, and therefore providing justification for persecutorial action against that social group.
Yeah.
And given that that's something we want to avoid in like a liberal democratic society, that impact is really morally reprehensible. And If you don't do that second impact there, then you run into an issue where,
Third impact.
let's say you have an argument about Jewish question, and then you have an argument about trickle down economics, for instance. Both of these are like unsound in the sense that they're both not really reflective of reality, like good economic practice or good social analysis. But at the same time, their kind of moral value of believing to them, like of them in the real world, is going to be vastly different, right? One is going to result in the persecution of a group of people for their ethnicity, and the other one is going to result in bad economic policy that sure is going to have some negative effects as well, but it's not quite going to be the same. And I feel that you're really good with the mechanization part because you will engage with arguments on their grounds in a way that most people will not. A lot of people will just start at the impact and they will leave it with their, oh, let's have an argument about the Jewish question. And they're like, sorry, that's like that it's anti-Semitism. And that's their argument, essentially. It's anti-Semitism. So they start at the impact and then kind of have that do the entire mechanization bit. But unless you also have the impact part there, then you kind of get a perception, like a rhetorical perception, that the weight of incorrect beliefs are kind of equalized there. Like believing the Jewish question might be kind of as bad as believing in, for example, rent control or trickle-down economics, because you don't really flesh out the impacts in that sense. And I can understand why you have a greater focus on the mechanization side of things, because there's so many people, particularly left-leaning people, that only do the impact and kind of forego the mechanization. But I think that including both of them is probably pretty important.
Yeah, I can do the impact, but the impact is very difficult because, one, the mechanization part probably means before the argument happens, they don't agree with the impact to some extent. Right? Because they've got a whole reason for why. So that's one big thing. I don't know if I'm going to win anybody over 100% with the mechanization enough to hit them with the impact first. And then two, the impact still has to fit within their framework, and it's exposing me to more potential risk or leak in my argument. So I'm trying to think of an example. I think there are probably ways that I could do this that might be effective, but I'd have to think specifically. It'd have to be somebody that's pretty closely morally aligned with me. So this might be an example. So I had an argument with Fuentes over including women in his movement, right?
Good morning, pal.
So I'm going to say, I'm going to do part one is the way that I went about this argument, and then part two would be the part that you would want me to add, okay? So part one would be, well, I think you should include women in your movement because it makes your movement larger. Probably is going to attract more men. There's going to be a lot of extra talent because there are going to be some women that are effective at politics, like Laura Loomer was the person that Fuentes went to support, right? There's going to be some women that are probably good at politics, and you want to include that talent. It's going to make your movement stronger. That might be like the mechanization part. The impact at the end is you might want me to add, if it was the case that women can contribute in the same way as men, wouldn't it be kind of fucked up to like leave them out of the movement? Like, wouldn't that just be kind of wrong to like deprive them of the opportunity to function in that space? And the impact is true.
This is so stupid. I've remarked on this before, but like, does Destiny think these people were born yesterday? That they're gonna go, wait a minute, maybe women are capable too. And then all of a sudden they just have like a Hallmark moment, and you have, a heartwarming conclusion to the tale where the Nazis become feminists, I suppose. I don't. Great literal feminazis. That's fantastic, Stephen. Thank you for that. This is what people are concerned about. Are the Nazis being sexist? That's the priority.
But I'm already working within this like Christian worldview, and for them listening, I don't know how many of them are going to think, well, like, no, actually, I don't think it would be wrong to leave women out. Even if women could contribute, I think there are other good reasons, because I'm in such a different moral framework. When I hit that impact statement, I have to make sure that it is fully congruent with the mechanization argument I gave earlier, and that it's still fitting within their moral framework. And if we're really far apart, that's going to be really hard. But if we're much closer together, then I think I could probably do better with the impact statements. Maybe I already do, but I could probably do better on the impact statements if we're closer morally together. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because and I think what you said was really good there, right? Because if you get ahead of yourself with the impact, then you're lost. Because then you're appealing to something like a quality or like a sentiment that you both don't share, and then you're just not meeting each other there. But so you mentioned two things, I think, initially. You said that what if they don't buy into the impact?
I'm alive.
And then what was the second point you mentioned right when I finished my thing about impact?
That the mechanization argument works, but if I want them to buy into the impact, we have to either have we have to have like a shared moral framework, basically, that coincides.
Okay.
If I can make it coincide with their morals and my mechanization, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So the important thing is, of course, you must lay out a convincing mechanistic argument first, because if you just go by the impact in the beginning, you're lost. But the impact can be an important like follow up, like kind of like an alley-oop, so to say, to your mechanization, because you're really good at making mechanical arguments. And once you've made the mechanical arguments, and let's say you have somebody and they buy you on the mechanical argument, they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. There's something wrong with my argument. There's something that's not really true here, or not reflective, or I'm doing something that's counterproductive, or not efficient, or whatever. But at that point in time, the only bad or the only negative that's kind of associated with that is, okay, I believe something that may not be entirely efficient or may not be entirely true. And a lot of people are kind of comfortable with that, right? So once you've kind of opened up and been like, okay, not only is this belief, there's an error in the way that you think that this applies, or something like that, but there's also an extra weight added to continuing to believe in that. That might be effective at actually getting people to move past that. But I do agree with what you're saying, how you need to have like some form of common buy-in for the impact to work out at all.
So I think this is not. I think this is not true. When you said people are comfortable with untrue things, I think that people are actually very uncomfortable with untrue things, and I think what happens is they do a lot of work in their mind to make it true. So like we might say that like for like the 9/11 stuff, how can you believe that the government?
Yes, Stephen, which is why your whole spiel about how you're going to convince the Nazis to like be more open to having women in their movement is ridiculous. They don't want them there already. It's not because they actually think for reasons that they reason through, badly or not, that women aren't appropriate for politics. That's all post-hocking it because they don't like women being around because it makes them uncomfortable.
Was all-knowing and all-powerful and able to do all of that, but like they made the World Trade Center Building 7 collapse like 5 hours later. Why couldn't they coordinate that better, right? So that's kind of weird. Or why, like, you might think that, but in their mind they're not thinking like, oh fuck, that's really hard to reconcile, I'm just gonna have to hold these two contradictory thoughts. Instead, in their mind they're like, well, no, they probably they'll make an excuse. They'll say like, oh well, they probably made it happen later for this reason, and now it's no longer two contradictory thoughts. They try to ease the dissonance as much as possible, right?
Sure, but at the same time, didn't maybe I'm misremembering or misunderstood what he said, but didn't at one point Nick say that, maybe this isn't true, but it's kind of my job to push against, like the mainstream narrative. And it sounded there like he kind of had like a presupposed belief and what it was going to end up with, and it feels like it's his mission to push that narrative no matter what.
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty demonstrative of like being okay with things not being accurate, right?
Yeah, that's kind of true. Nick is a huge exception though, right? Because he's like an ideological leader here. His mind is not going to be like most people. I think that if you confront the vast majority of people on their beliefs, they're not going to say that like, yeah, I have some thoughts that are kind of like irreconcilable. They will have done all of the mental work necessary. It's where the term mental gymnastics comes from. They're going to do all the mental work necessary to make those beliefs like work. And I feel like,
why do you think so? Just because Nick's a leader doesn't mean that other people aren't also like packed to the brim with ulterior reasons for believing things. That's so naive. Like it's therapeutic. If like it allows you to indulge in a feeling of superiority or a feeling of indignation or a feeling of hatred. That's pleasurable at a dark level. It's not satisfying, but it's therapeutic in an unsatisfying way. People become kind of addicted to it. Like if you have no success with women or you feel intimidated by them, it can be very therapeutic to just insist in your brain that they're just beneath you or they're depraved in some way. That makes you feel better about the fact that you're actually just, even in your own mind's eye, just inadequate.
like in terms of emails that I've gotten from people, generally the way that I usually turn people, and this isn't to say, by the way, that that impact arguments wouldn't work or impact statements work, because maybe they wouldn't, I just haven't tried it enough. But usually it's on the mechanistic part when I start to introduce confusion. people will work to reconcile that confusion, and sometimes the reconciliation requires them to abandon whatever content creator or ideological movement they're a part of. It'll be like, hey, I saw you debate with Fuentes or Lauren Southern or this Tanky or whatever, and after I watched it, like, you brought up some questions and it was kind of weird and I didn't really have answers for them, and I kind of looked around and blah, 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 and then eventually you kind of drift out of those movements because that's what happens with incongruencies. That's how every atheist is born, right? You start out in a religious movement and then eventually you ask enough questions, you're like, fuck, and then you kind of drift out. And I think that's always
but then what happens? You become so enamored with the fact that, like, hey, religion is stupid, that you don't really think a whole lot afterwards either. There are a lot of people who, like, manage to free themselves from the blinders of, like, a fundamentalist upbringing, who then never got any more sophisticated for the rest of their lives.
My goal is on the mechanism part to just make you feel a little bit uneasy about your ideas, such that the resolution of those inconsistencies and variable requires it to fall out.
Stupid son of a...
Yeah, I see what you mean there. So I could say that I could see the impact thing going either way. It could be a thing. Well, I'm not sure actually. I think that at best, or sorry, at worst, having an incorrect impact is kind of just not going to do anything, right? Because if they don't share it, they're just going to be like, I literally don't care, right? I don't think it's likely to turn people off unless you're so very far away that you're just expressing and working within a value system is going to make them be like, oh, what the fuck, like that's pretty fucked up. But
it's hard to say because the impact, and this is where I'm starting to force more conversations. I think we need to work within the framework of examples, because I can think of ways that an incorrect impact statement could really fuck you up. Like, let's say that we where I could trip and stumble into a whole other host of arguments. Let's say we're arguing about, like, white people being allowed to advocate for themselves. Like, I think I should be able to say white power or white rights or whatever without it being racist. And you have that whole argument. And let's say that I go through the mechanistic argument and I give the examples like, well, white people historically that have done this are kind of shady. White people don't really need to advocate for themselves as a group. It's more subgroups that need to advocate for themselves. Let's say I make a really good mechanistic argument. Then let's say at the very end, it's like, okay, we've done all that. And then let's say at the very end, I'm like, it's a little bit strange, I think, to have, like, majority groups in power come out and advocate on behalf of their own interests when, as a group, they don't really need to. Like, it almost feels like they're attacking other groups through doing that. Like, you're kind of protesting their protests, and we probably don't want to take away issues from, like, other groups in society or whatever. Let's say that's some kind of...
I would say that's a bad impact.
What could the yeah, sure, well, give me a possible effective impact statement. Yeah.
So for example, in that instance, I think the issue with that is you're focusing on kind of it's kind of the difference between when people talk about, should we say white privilege or should you talk about like a minority penalty, right? How focusing on white privilege is going to make, you know, the people who need to hear it the most, they're the ones that have this quote unquote privilege. So they're kind of the people being targeted by that statement. In the way that you were talking about it, then presumably it would be like a white person making this argument about white power, why this is okay and whatever. So then when you make that argument, well, with hegemonic groups are making this and it's kind of like weird or whatever, you're attacking them personally. But if you frame it in the sense of like, so because ideally we want to have a society where you see that minority groups are able to advocate for their own interests in a different way because of the fact that they're in a fundamentally different position societally, so that they can rise up and be able to live in parity with so you focus on the minority, you don't focus on them as a person, like the opposition there, you don't ascribe anything to them. I think that's probably going to be a lot more efficient.
Okay, gotcha. Let's say that you go that route and you focus on like the fact that minority groups should be able to advocate for their interests or whatever. Let's say that you do that. It feels like when you hit that part of the argument, you introduce this world where now there's other moral arguments being made. It's like where the whole everything for the mechanical shit gets tossed aside, and now people are saying like, well, hold on, like, I don't know if I feel like it's okay that minority groups should be able to advocate for themselves and I'm not allowed to advocate for myself. Like, that actually feels wrong.
Well, ideally,
feels
you
like,
should have explained that in the mechanization, right? Because that's the argument that you're having. You're arguing about why saying, like, you know, white power and whatever isn't okay. So that should have been something that's in the mechanization, no?
If you cover it well enough, if you're hitting it that effectively in the mechanization argument that you're dealing with that, then what is the purpose, I guess, of the impact statement at the end then? Yeah,
so that's what I was saying. I said at the worst case, I think that the impact can just be non-effective. It just doesn't add anything because you just don't meet. But I think in the best case, it can add an extra pressure for them to really, like, because moving off a position is difficult. Moving off a position can take quite a bit of time. And I think that adding like a moral weight through an impact statement can add like an extra pressure that makes people more incentivized towards like really critically examining and potentially expediting that process of potentially moving off this belief. When otherwise you might just be like, okay, you know, there's just some potential issues and flaws in this that may not logically make sense. Whereas with the good impact statement, it's okay, there's some flaws logically, things that don't make sense. And also through continuing to perpetuate and believe this idea, I'm also contributing to this moral harm, right? So
Yeah, I guess, yeah. It's not,
the
I can
stakes
think
are
about
higher
that as
there.
like hitting up with like the mutually compatible kind of moral statement at the end. Maybe, yeah. I just have to think of the argument. I'll keep it in mind more, I guess, in a future debate if I feel like I can throw that in at the end. Yeah, it'll just depend on who I'm arguing with and what the argument is, but sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then to also explain how this relates to maybe some of the things we're seeing right now, and that's because a lot of the people,
So, like, my inclination generally would be to go, well, you know, someone like Rose Wrist and even Destiny 2 to a certain extent, they're hyper focusing on like debate strategy and weirdly like assuming like a really condescending attitude towards their interlocutor in this case. Where all of a sudden, because they're in a position to discourse with somebody, the person who is opposed to them is just like an innocent child that they have to mold. It's not another agent with their own designs that are contra yours, and they might will themselves to a different position from you, even if you win the argument. The reason why is just because this is just, you know, this is their background, this is what they understand. This is the only way they know how to deal with these situations, because they come from a milieu where it's just like, this is how you war with these people, is you debate them. And that's it. And if you don't, well, then you're not satisfying John Stuart Mill's ideal of democracy as a marketplace of ideas or something. But I also don't think they're that naive. I think that what's kind of going on here is this is post hoc, and this is their skill set, and they have to justify doing something for personal gain. Specifically, them doing it for personal gain. How can I spin this so I'm doing a good to offset the fact that I'm really, really selling out hard and abetting somebody whose politics are contra what I claim mine to be, and which will have actual, really negative effects in the world if they can keep up that momentum that I give them freely. Like, I don't think this is a case of, you know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think this is a case of like, shit, all I have is a hammer. How can I sell myself in a world where there are only a few nails? Oh, I'll try to convince people. No, this is a nail problem. They're like the petrol companies of online politics, I suppose.
I think that who see you make the arguments, they see you do the nice mechanistic arguments, but because they don't see you maybe do the impact to the same extent, that's why people will look at, you know, some of the debates you've had with Nick Fuentes and still complain over like, oh, you're not pushing back enough, you're not being direct enough, you're not being clear enough, because you're doing everything nice on the factual grounds, but you're not really getting to the moral weight.
Was that originally Mill's idea? Mill has the idea that you need to be able to discourse freely in a particular kind of way. Not. I don't think he uses the marketplace language. I'll have to figure out what the actual source of that is. It might be Mill. I don't think it is though. But Mill is a major source for the notion that discourse is a primary mover, like verbal discourse, and intellectual discourse is a primary mover of social progress
of the beliefs
and
that
science
you're
and
discussing. So that could be another thing. Of course, I don't know if you probably don't care at all about those types of people and their perceptions, because that's not who you're trying to reach, and also you don't seem to just care about those people a lot generally. So I mean, I don't know how much you're going to take into consideration in this, but I think this could be like a good explanation. Maybe you can keep in mind that this might be why people get the perception that even though you feel like, oh, I'm doing so much pushback against them, people still end up running around and saying like, oh, Destiny, you didn't push hard enough or whatever.
Yeah,
now,
maybe, because when they're listening to a debate
but
and they already agree with me, the mechanization part doesn't make them feel any better, because they don't even give a fuck about that. They're looking for the impact because it's all a moral thing to them anyway, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that
So
that can help
positive-
you, and it wasn't it.
Positive impact statements basically is a more elaborate way of me saying like Nick bad in a way that the audience hears and they're like, oh, thank God. And then it kind of like solidifies their position. That could be possible too, sure.
Yeah, exactly. But once again, just to be hyper clear, a good impact statement is an impact statement is really contingent on a good mechanism.
Yeah, and it's going to be depending on how. I don't mean that I would just say Nick bad at the end, but it would have to be an effectively done. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Okay, so I think that was the
Yeah, I even had the page bookmarked. It's chapter 2 of On Liberty where he goes into that. I don't remember the marketplace notion isn't him, but he has but the peculiar evil of, I'm quoting from Mill now, Quote, but the peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race, posterity as well as the existing generation, those who dissent from the opinion still more than those who hold it. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If wrong, they lose what is almost as great a benefit, the clearer perception and a livelier impression of truth produced by its collision with error. Now, Mill's not an idiot, and he actually does have caveats later on, but that's Mill.
The chill part, that was the tips out now, no more debate theory, I don't think. The other thing I want to talk about was my document and quote docs in general. I've gotten a bit of, so I haven't kept up super much. I've had a few busy days, and you've put a lot of content about this recently in discussions with Mr. Girl and the rest of it. How do you feel about my document? Do you think it's a good piece of information to utilize? Do you think it paints the wrong picture? How do you feel about it?
I went through a few things, but I'm generally not in favor of, like, I'm more in favor of like essay format stuff when it comes to writing something persuasive than like a bunch of quotes. Just because I feel like it's a better way to contend with or grasp or understand like a certain set of positions. Not to say that those can't be effective in like convincing people of some things or whatever, but like for instance, when I try to understand like Hassan's position on something or Vosh's position on something, I'm usually watching like, for in the case of Vosh or even Hassan, it'll be hours and hours of video to get like a pretty fleshed out understanding of what they're saying. And you know, if somebody asks me like, well, what does Vosh believe about this, or what does Hassan believe about that? Like I'll be able to tell you like, well, you know, I watched him talk about this speech here, and I think that he does this thing here, and I think he believes this here, and I think that he probably believes that for that and that and that. And I can give you like a really good reason why. But if somebody's like, well, why does this guy believe this? And you're like, well, here's 7 quotes from that dude. Like, especially when it comes to streamers or people doing hours and hours and hours of content, like, I don't care as much about, like, quotes, because I don't know if that's really getting me to the essence of what they believe as much. It's kind of my issue, generally.
I agree with what you say. Typically, additional textual analysis will be helpful, whatever you're analyzing, for sure. However, I will say that there might be a bit of a difference between the type of issues and beliefs you're thinking of when you talk about Vosh and Hassan versus you're thinking of when we're having these discussions with Fuentes. So what I mean by this, if the question was, how does Nick Fuentes believe the Jewish question works? Like, how exactly? Like, where are the cabals located? How many people? Where is the money being sent or whatever? I agree in that situation, quotes will not cut it. But if the question is, does Nick Fuentes hold like bigoted or conspiracy theory, Jewish question-esque beliefs about Jewish people, then I think that the quotes in that instance more than enough proves it, right? Because there is not about trying to get like a deep and contextual understanding about how this belief really works and what the details of his belief are. You're just trying to understand whether or not he has the belief.
I mean, like, I understand that, but like, I think it's, shit, hold on. I'm trying to think of a way to say this. I'll just say this. This is going to sound really condescending, but I don't mean it to sound that way. I think that might be good enough for a lot of people. That's not enough for me. I need more than that. I usually want more than that. When I'm analyzing people's stuff, I really truly want to know what they mean or believe. Like when that, it's very easy to call, I keep wanting to say Rashid Tlaib, but it's not. It's the other one. The Jews have hypnotized the world or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No idea.
It was one of the squad, but Ilhan Omar made that statement about Israel, about how Jews had hypnotized the world or whatever, and that quote is very fucking weird. When I saw that quote, I was like, that's really strange. But just seeing the quote and then just seeing the tweet about the quote, that's not enough, right? So what I'm thinking is like, okay, well, hold on. So she's talking about Israel. Just because you're anti-Zionist doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. Just because you hate Israel doesn't mean you hate Jewish people. So it's like, well, what other quotes can we find about, or what other speeches, or what other statements has she made relating to this or that? And then these are usually the types of things that I'm trying to like go through to ascertain like, what is your opinion? It's never going to be enough to just like have a quote, especially once you get into like internet humor and shit. Because now we can like, you can make Vosh sound like he believes anything. You can make me sound like I fucking believe anything, depending on like the quotes that you're going to give. So I'd rather, now I'm not saying that a quote is wrong.
I'm going to push back a little bit here.
Yep, go.
Because I believe that that's true. You can make it look like anyone believes anything if you take things out of context. Do you believe that any of the quotes I've included in my document are taken out of context?
Well, but that's hard because when you provide a joke, how am I supposed to evaluate the context of that?
That's true. However, I think at some point when you have like dozens and dozens and dozens of jokes about the same like bigoted core claim, in addition to like multiple pieces of content where said person in question talks about the importance of...
I hate just on the flip side of all of this, I really hate this notion that the frequency of jokes indicates a general underlying disposition. Okay, I think Destiny makes racist jokes in private all the time. I don't think for a second that Destiny actually believes any of those things. I don't think they indicate anything about him except for the fact that he has poor taste in humor at a certain time, like most of us do at some point or other, in some capacity. I don't think the frequency, and again, like, meme culture has its own pleasure too. Like when you're repeating racist jokes or jokes of like a particular off color, or, you know, jokes that are specific to a community, and everybody's like giggling and gaggling on them. That feels good. Like you're a part of something. You're being you're given approval. People are happy around you. People will sometimes say unfunny jokes, and people will reply lol, while not laughing at all, because the social aspect of that is pleasurable. I don't think that in itself is revealing of an underlying position. It's also irrelevant, because it doesn't matter ultimately if they ultimately believe these things, if they're acting for precisely the same reason because it is pleasurable or therapeutic to do so. Two ends that are identical, two ends that would be aspired to by somebody who did believe those things. That's why this whole like thing speculating about Nick Fuentes' actual secret beliefs is meaningless, because I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody serious cares about whether or not Nick truly believes this stuff, because he's too dishonest to be dissuaded from it, even if it was a true belief, and he's too heavily motivated, both financially and socially, to continue to do it, even if it wasn't. Like, it's just irrelevant. Like, great. So he doesn't really believe, he doesn't like have a substantive reason to believe that Jews run the world, or whatever, or that whites are superior, or that any of these things. But he still believes it for pragmatic reasons that he's not willing to interrogate, so they fill the same function. Like, this is like Star Wars Episode 3 logic. This is dumb. It's just dumb.
Of irony and jokes in, like, slowly and subtly, like, instilling political beliefs, like, inside an audience. I think at that point it gets. I think at that point the evidence is pretty high enough. Assuming that what you're trying to prove is just that they have this belief, not that you're trying to get an in-depth understanding. So, for example, this wouldn't be enough if I were to debate Nick Fuentes on the Jewish question. These quotes are fucking nothing. Okay, these are worthless.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to figure out whether or not Nick is bigoted against Jewish people, then I think they do.
Possibly. There are some statements that I think I could say, like, yes, 100%. Like, if you were like, does Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic humor? The answer is obviously yes. Does Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic humor that could point people in a direction or lead them down a road of anti-Semitism? Absolutely, the answer is yes. Is Fuentes a Nazi because he's that anti-Semitic? Oof. Is he actually, like, super anti-Semitic, or is a lot of it just, like, really edgy humor?
It doesn't matter. It has no bearing on the question of whether it actually makes sense for you to be giving this person, as he is now, access to a massive following. Massive. Bigger than yours. Now he's talking to Sneeko. Like, at this point, it doesn't even matter. Like, you're the small fry now, which is the irony of all of this. And like, we don't need to speculate about whether or not your reasons are the practical reasons you're post hoc giving now are effective or not, because really we know what your views were when you were talking to Nick. They're way higher than when you're not. You want to tap into that dark audience because you want money. You see, like, you're seeing the mega church pastors in their jumbo jets, and you're seeing Richard Spencer in his nice suits, and you want some of that.
Like, at this point, there's two things going here. One, I need to dig a lot deeper for me to be satisfied knowing for sure. But two, I don't really care. rather than try to figure out if he's anti-Semitic, I think I would just attack him on the anti-Semitic humor. I would attack him on the anti-Semitic implications, or I would just attack him on his like concrete positions about Jewish people. Because Nick has a lot of concrete Jewish positions about Jewish people that I would attack, like things related to Jewish conspiracy theories or like fucking 9/11 or whatever. Like I can fight on these grounds, and I don't have to do any guesswork at all. Why would I even waste my time trying to divine whether or not he's truly anti-Semitic or truly anti-Israel or anti-Jewish or whatever, when I can just go with the things he said and fight on those grounds?
Okay, how does you doing that when we've established that this person is dishonest and is situated, like here's the thing too, he's a leader, right? So one of the things he can't do is change his mind. He can't change his mind. He changes his mind, he loses his whole audience. You're fucked. They're not gonna go, oh, Nick Fuentes, that paragon of virtue and rationality, he changed his mind on the Jewish question? Golly gee, I've been living a lie, I'm a leftist now. No, somebody else will step in to take his place, as has already happened. Again, like he was out of grace even in the right wing for a long time before you started boosting him again. By a long time on the scale of like a year or months or so. But like, check DM, this is important and why destiny is crucial to this question. Oh, it's another... Okay. Alright. Alright, apparently this is crucial.
Perfect. It's perfect for Fuentes. Stardust. Fuentes has reached out to Stardust a lot, done a lot of streams with her. These are people that make him appear less racist, less fascistic, less unreasonable, and just nicer, less calculating. This it all has the effect of lowering this wall. And Steven, Stardust couldn't have made my career, and Sneeko couldn't have made my career. Steven is uniquely positioned to give somebody the stamp of approval of, yeah, I know this guy looks really bad, but you can let your guard down and you can have ice cream with him. So... yeah. And even in that process, all that can perfect. It's perfect for Fuentes.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, well said. I mean, he's also self-describing, of course, but explicitly. But yeah, basically. Here, I want to see what he says after that point. It's a shortcut clip, and it's annoying me.
Process, all that can be true, and Steven can de-radicalize 30,000 groypers. That doesn't negate the effect of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well said, Elemental Lithium. Destiny is pretending that anti-Semitism is a consequence of Nick's positions rather than a goal he's attempting to implement. Exactly. Mr. Girl spitting. Mr. Girl spits a lot. I just wish he didn't do all of the creepy shit on the side. Why are we going back to Mr. Girl? Stop asking dumb questions. It was pertinent to this. He was making a commentary on what I was talking about.
Okay, so I guess this kind of stems to the main issue then. Do you believe that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic?
I don't know, but I haven't like thought about it a ton. I'm
What?
not sure.
What do you mean you haven't thought about it a ton? You're banning people from your chat for apparently being unreasonable and asking you questions about this. What the fuck do you mean you haven't thought about it a ton? How dare you have not thought about it a ton? At this point. Like, seriously? Why would you say that? You look like an idiot. Yeah, no, guys, Nick's not a Nazi. No, I haven't thought about it a ton. Like, fucking hell.
It's
okay.
There's a lot of different. The thing.
Why is Destiny uniquely positioned thus? Because he has the credibility of his historical pushback against the radical right, while also being himself edgy and sort of crossing that boundary. So people who are already amenable to people who cross that boundary, and who are amenable to like certain toxic positions, and like the ambience that Destiny has cultivated in which toxic positions are facilitated. Did we lose the connection? No, it looks like we haven't. Okay. people who like the ambience of his channel, which is permissive of certain extremely toxic positions, to be like sort of allowed to float. Destiny, with his reach and his cult of personality, is able to effectively license people who would otherwise judge this person to be, you know, beneath contempt, as like, oh, you know, he's actually kind of interesting. I'm going to listen to this guy. I'm going to donate to this guy. I'm going to give this guy exposure. I'm going to recommend my friends to this guy. Destiny was the only regular lefty to participate in internet blood sports when it was super popular, so even the alt-right like him. I don't think he was ever really a lefty. I think he was, he did get a lot of clout off of, writing left-wing causes, sort of negatively in the sense of being opposite people like Lawrence Southern, etc., etc. But I watched that Mr. Girl stream. I think he said he appreciates your feedback, but you should be more empathetic. I'm very empathetic. Mr. Girl doesn't understand the distinction between being nice and being kind. If I am kind to people who want to kill other people, if I am friendly to people who want to kill other people, and I am nice to them, then I am not being kind to the people that they want to kill unless I am very certain that by doing so I am neutering their capacity or their will to hurt those people. And the problem here is that like Destiny is one of two options before him to justify what he's doing. One is he is certain that he can actually switch Nick Fuentes' position and turn him into a force for good, or at the very least stop him in his tracks. Or two, claim that it has no effect and doesn't matter. The problem is, by admitting that he hasn't thought about this very much, he demonstrates that he should not expect to be competent at all in terms of switching this person's positions. And by ignoring the negative effects of giving this person access potentially to a very large audience, he demonstrates that he actually has no concern for the real-life effects of this person succeeding. And so he's not concerned to neuter this person politically, because he only glosses over him engaging with this person in this casual way afterwards, with this this explanation of him trying to convert Fuentes as an afterthought. He has no investment in either of these narratives. He's just kind of throwing them out there, and then milking the following controversy for additional content. So yeah.
The thing is that there's a lot of different factors at play that make it hard to know 100%. One is he is very edgy and engages in a lot of edgy humor. I'm very edgy and I engage in a lot of edgy humor. You could absolutely quote mine the fuck out of me in saying edgy things. So, but you gave two conditions. One is the actual conspiracy stuff, and the second is the jokes. I could satisfy the second part, the jokes. The first part, when you say like, well, is he anti-Semitic in terms of he believes in actual conspiracy theories? At this point, I have to try to tease apart very carefully, like, what are the actual anti-Semitic conspiracies versus what are like the kind of like populist, like Jews and the elite are controlling society. Because the issue you run into is, depending on how broadly you're going to paint the quote unquote anti-Semitic brush, now on the far left, and we actually saw this happen in the UK with Corbyn. And we've seen it happen with the Squad on the left. And so
also, this is an additional factor, right? So Destiny isn't converting people to a left position, and he isn't converting people to a moderate position. The position that Destiny is converting people to is essentially, can you open it up enough leeway so we can talk to each other on stream? And that's basically it. Because he doesn't just posture as the center. He tries to characterize lefties categorically as being insane grifters. So the goal is not turning these people from advocates for white supremacy into advocates for equality. The goal is turn these people from advocates of white supremacy into advocates of white supremacy that can get along with liberals. He's not actually doing anything to stop these people. He's just acclimating his own community to them. It goes in that direction, 100%.
With the anti-Israeli, the BDS or whatever sentiment and shit in the United States, we've seen it happen here too.
Not 100%, but close enough.
Where people are quick to say, well, these things make you sound anti-Semitic. You know, if you oppose Israel, if you're trying to blockade their shit, if you're trying to trade, blah, 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 or yeah. So it's just, that's a really, really, really challenging question to answer. Yeah, go. Boom.
To what you said there, so you said, for example, okay, what do we mean? Is it just like Jews control the world, or is it like Jews and...
Also, guys, don't be nice to Rose Wrist, okay? And there's a very specific reason why I say this. It is very easy when you're watching these characters in isolation to go, oh, they're just confused. They're just nice, normal people, and they've got bad opinions, whatever. But they're probably really sweet in real life. People who act like this and who prey upon this kind of thing. Nobody who does this is nice, including me. Nobody is nice. Okay, you're talking about people whose bread and butter, is engaging with some of the worst and most narcissistic actors existing, and destroying the reputations of their enemies without any regard for the additional social or personal fallout of that. None of these people are nice. Every single person you engage with in this space, in my capacity, with very few exceptions, is extraordinarily hostile and pernicious to people in their immediate orbit. Examples abound for Destiny. I would be very surprised if examples don't abound for any of these other people. It is a very rare case, and you have to be extraordinarily generous. It is a very rare case where you have people who are actually decent IRL. Some of the exceptions are people who don't really have an IRL outside of this. Some people actually are the character they portray on stream, or just have nothing else going on. But like, don't assume that any of these people are your friend, because they're not.
And global league control the world. I would say that both of those probably qualify as anti-Semitic statements. Would you disagree?
They probably would, I would imagine.
Okay.
If you think Jews control the world, yeah. Or at the very, well, assuming it's not true, right? Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm doing myself dirty a little bit. I'm generally pretty nice to people I care about, but actually, I think I'm generally nice to, or kind rather, not nice. I try to be kind to most people I engage with. But like, not with respect to Rose Wrist, of course I'm not. Not with respect to Destiny, I'm not. Not even with respect to Vosh, I'm not. And I like Vosh. I even like Destiny, honestly, despite everything. Like, he's like, not in terms of what he does or what he believes or anything about him external to his like presentation, his mode of speaking. But like, he's got some charm, and he's sort of pleasant to engage with back and forth. Which is interesting, because you can catch when he's bullshitting you, which is very frequently. But he does it in such a way as you can still maintain flow, and there's an enjoyability about that. So when I say I like him, I need to be very specific. I don't mean I like him, I mean like, like there's pleasantness in engaging with this person. But like, like again, like the nature of this business is knives out. It shouldn't be. I'd like it to not be. I try very hard to make it not be with people I engage with, but it's one of those things where it has to be like it's a prisoner's dilemma. It's exactly what it is, actually. Like Chud Logic? I count him as a friend on one level, but I also can't on another. Because this is a man who eats the people he associates with for a wage. And everyone he associates with does the same. It's sad, actually. It really is. Especially since, like, it's one thing to play that game to get to a point where you have influence and you can have efficacy, right? But what tends to happen is people get that efficacy, or they get a sufficient amount of efficacy to actually make a difference. But it never stops. That's just them now. They lose themselves in the process. Maybe that was never them to begin with. Maybe that was a front too, but And it's needless too. Because there's no rule that says that having the ambition to actually do something positive and constructive and to make things better and to make people know more and to be more empathetic and to be better. There's nothing about that intrinsically that disadvantages you should you be trying to do so. You have to take the steps that are required in order to be able to do so first, but there's no rule that says that you can't do that and succeed at doing that. However, the assumption has prevailed because it's the lowest common denominator and the center of gravity for people with no ability, or with no confidence, or with no loyalty. That no, in fact, you need to sacrifice all of your principles, which just so happen, by the way, to be inconveniences, in order to succeed. Except, if you think it through, that doesn't actually make a lot of sense. Because you haven't succeeded. You've given up, and you've thrown the chess pieces onto the floor, and you're now playing action figures with them. And maybe you win a lot at that game, but it's not a game where winning means anything, or it's an accomplishment, or anything is gained from it. Not that like you gain something from a chess game, but I guess the metaphor ends there.
That's an anti-Semitic statement, generally, yeah. But it's just, the problem is that, like, for us to wade into these waters, we're going to have to start to do a ton of analysis, a ton of, like, sophisticated irony and meta-irony analysis. We're going to have to make sure that our sources are relevant enough that they're recent, because I don't know about stuff 4 or 5 years ago. No offense to Nick, or take offense. I don't care about Shady Sam when he was 19 or 20. He's 24 now. His beliefs might have changed quite a bit. And the political climate pre and post Charlottesville has changed. It's just so much work. I just don't care that much. If there are people that really want to put together, and I notice you did this and other people, if you want to put together things, say, by the way, guys, this is shit that Fuentes has said in the past, I think that's fine. That's totally okay.
Can't help but think of how Professor Flowers acted towards you, although I don't know if that was as much about business as it was just her to go. I have no idea. It can also be both, right? Like, I think when people get motivated by spite, they sort of license themselves to act in a certain way. I've done this. God knows I've done this. So, I don't know. I don't have any bad blood towards Professor Flowers. That whole thing was just unfortunate. It was frustrating.
But I want to fight on solid ground, and I want to fight with the things that he says. I don't want to try to, like, I think you're an anti-Semite, and now I'm going to argue to convince you why I think you're an anti-Semite, and then maybe, like, I'd rather just fight over the statements themselves. That's where I feel. It's so much easier. Yeah, go.
So maybe we're arguing a bit about like a bit of a red herring. So let's say that a divine entity, okay, came down and they touched you on the forehead, and now you had for sure knowledge about whether or not Nick Fuentes held bigoted beliefs against Jewish people. And let's say that revealed to you that yes, he is by your definition of the world for sure anti-Semitic. How would you proceed forward with this information? Would you change anything?
I don't think I would, actually. I think I would stay the course.
Okay, so then this. Okay. So
then what does it matter? Why are we talking about this? This doesn't factor into anything. So this whole conversation was useless. Thanks, Steve.
The argument about whether or not he is, I guess, irrelevant to you completely.
Yeah, because the issue is how difficult it would be to prove it. Because it's just, I just don't.
When was that an issue? That's not an issue. Nobody cares if you can prove it or not. We can already prove what he's trying to do. He was at January 6th. He advocates these positions. He's been doing so for years. He's financially incentivized to do so, so we have no reason to expect that he would change his position because he is not a conscientious man who would be motivated to do so.
Don't care about that. Let me be more specific. When I say that I don't care about that argument, what I mean is it's not an effective area for me to argue in whether he is or isn't anti-Semitic, because at the end of the day, whatever I end up establishing there is probably not going to be effective towards any side. Like, for my audience, most of them probably think he's anti-Semitic. So let's say I do establish that he is anti-Semitic. That doesn't help anybody on my end. If I fail to establish that he's anti-Semitic, it makes me look bad. People in my audience might be like, oof, Destiny's kind of like making shit up about people. And then for his audience, let's say that I fight really hard and I establish he is anti-Semitic. I find it hard to believe that an America First guy would be like, damn, Nick's actually anti-Semitic? I gotta leave. And then if I fail to establish that he's anti-Semitic, well, now it's like a huge fucking laugh. Like, Destiny just wasted this whole debate and he couldn't even establish, like, the obvious fact that we hate Jews. Yeah.
Now we're looping back to the thing about impact, right? Because ideally, if you're able to make a solid enough mechanical argument, here's where the importance of being like, hey, this argument that Nick Fuentes is making, like you're in a debate with Nick Fuentes and he says some weird shit about Jewish people or whatever. This argument that you're making, you attack it first on the mechanical grounds, but here's where it's also important to be like, and the results of this type of rhetoric and this type of argumentation is going to lead to broadly negative and antagonistic sentiments being directed against minority groups, which is where it doesn't end up really well, right?
True, but remember, the impact statement rests on the effectiveness of the mechanical statement. An impact statement after a bad mechanical statement, it looks like you're falling flat. It looks like you're, I don't want to use sowing out, but like you're like crying at that point, like, guys, he's evil. If I could share that revelation, let's say
you're good, but the thing is, you're really good at mechanical statements, right? And that's the thing.
I'm good at mechanical statements when I'm right. I'm good at mechanical statements because I am rhetorically effective, but it's because I put in a lot of work. I'll research shit until I can argue, right? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, the mechanical statements come from knowing the true things. Not
dude, an overwhelming number of professors were fired from universities because of not towing the progressive line, so you can't talk to leftist academics or leftists generally anymore. Remember? Like, 20 hours of research proved that the entire list you showed me was wrong, and you were just starting? You don't research shit. You go into Wikipedia, scrambling at the last minute.
Just because I know people will say this, it's because he's a good debater. I am a good debater. But if he's truly not anti-Semitic, and I try to say that he is, that's a really complicated world to enter. In that earlier example, you said if a god told me that he's anti-Semitic, if he gave me that answer in a box and I could share that with people, then I would go full steam ahead. Then I'd say, look, he is anti-Semitic. Fucking the guy gave me, look in the box, he is. Then I'd be like, okay, the god.
Pulp Fiction,
The Pulp Fiction box, Then I'd say, yeah, boom, he is. Then I would go full steam ahead. But even there are some things that I even know that are true that I won't argue because it's so difficult to weigh through those arguments. Sorry, you were gonna say something else. I'm cutting off. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's take it in a different direction then instead. So number one, I think you're really good at mechanical. So you've already done the difficult part, right? The difficult part is being good at the mechanical part, and that's why you see the issue. And I understand why you've been turned off from the impact, because a lot of lefty people, they will be like, this is anti-Semitic, this is transphobic, this is racist, and they'd use that in place of an argument. And that's obviously a lot easier to you, but you have the mechanization down, which is why I feel like this impact part is really the easiest part, if you can swallow some of the things you have about being soy, right? But the second thing I was going to say now is that, okay, let's move past Nick Fuentes being anti-Semitic, because you seem to have already said that you can't bother proving that point because it's complex, it requires multiple dimensions. So do you believe Nick Fuentes makes anti-Semitic arguments?
I think based on what I've heard, at least one comment, I asked him, I was like, where are you at right now with the anti-Semitism shit? And I think he's like, I think he said, before we would have said Jews are 70% of the problems, but now they're like, I think he said 30 to 50%. That sounds a little bit anti-Semitic. And my guess is going to be that if I would have I'm trying to think, did he say that Israel was behind 9/11 or was it Bush? I don't remember, but if he would have said Israel was behind 9/11, I'd say that's a little bit anti-Semitic. And then I'm guessing that if we were to have a debate on the Holocaust,
I think it's pretty anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah, he would probably be like really like Holocaust revisionist, if not outright denialist, which I would say is probably anti-Semitic. That'd be my guess. Yeah.
Okay.
There is a world where I could have a debate and probably prove that like Fuentes is anti-Semitic. I just don't see the point of doing it. But there's probably a world where I could do that. I would pick out like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving past. Okay, fuck saying that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic, because you seem to have already made up your mind about that. So let's say you're having an argument with Nick Fuentes. So instead of the impact being like, oh, Nick Fuentes, like people like you are anti-Semitic, you're contributing to this. How about making the impact focus on the rhetoric instead? Like this argument that you're making, this is an anti-Semitic argument, this is a little whatever, like that. How does that sound to you?
That's really bad, because the way that these guys view themselves is they think that their moral statements are coming downstream from their factual analysis. So if I'm trying to fight them on the moral ground, but the factual analysis is correct, it makes it look like I'm just making an appeal to emotion because I know that I've lost the factual ground. So for instance, if somebody's legitimately saying black people have 75 IQ because they're black and that's how their brains are, and at the end I'm like, okay, but like, come on, like, shouldn't they be allowed to participate in society like white people are? They're going to view themselves as like arbiters of fact and being like, no, Destiny, they can't participate in the same way because they're not the same. And then it's going to make the moral argument.
But in that case, they're gone no matter what.
No, but I don't think so. That's where I disagree. I think that if I can instill enough doubt in that like if I can instill enough doubt in that mind of the person who's like, okay, well, fuck, maybe the Minnesota transracial adoption study isn't like the best thing to look at when it comes to comparing differences in IQ. Maybe the fact that all these IQ researchers seem to have like, that's why I try to like seed the plant or sow the plants of doubt, sow the seeds of doubt. Because if I can get them on that part, then the moral part I think will change a little bit. But if that moral statement is coming from the description, this is why it's so hard to say, even when we talk about the anti-Semitic thing, like here, like you asked me this question, you say, if somebody believes that Jews run the world, is that anti-Semitic? That's actually a hard statement to answer, because let's say it came out that Jews did run the world. If you found that out,
let's say they run it like, and you're like really.
No, Steve, it's not anti-Semitic because it's untrue. It is untrue. It's anti-Semitic because it's oriented against Semites. It's a statement that even if it was true that there was some secret Jewish cabal, you're still looping in Jews categorically into that. And secondly, there's not. So it's spuriously against Jews. And in addition, it isn't against Jews for factual reasons. There's the additional ulterior motive of wanting a bugbear to despise and to persecute to make yourself feel powerful and vindicated in your failure. That's it's and then there's the additional factor too, where it's like, because this is an active thing, entertaining this in a casual way where it's constantly left open for there to be a respectable angle on this, that's an additional issue, because we're not talking about like, do Martians run the world? We're talking about, does a group of people who happen to live in somewhat distinct communities in some places, are they secretly the enemy of my people? There are consequences to that. There are consequences to that being entertained. There are consequences to that not being shunned. And they vastly outweigh the consequences of it being shunned. Like, the issue with the Jewish conspiracy is not that it's not whether or not there are indeed Jews in powerful places. Of course there are somewhere. The issue is that it's anti-Semitic. That's precisely it. Because it isolates a group of people for persecution. Simple as that. And when you give any water to this, you are in effect giving water. If you carry water for this, you are carrying water for people who will take that as license to carry forward that thesis, because they want to persecute those people.
With how the world runs, is that where we're going, or?
Well, no. Let's just say that. Well, let's say that you're unhappy about how parts of the world are, because that's what most people are. Like, let's say that you personally, you Rosewrist, let's say that you find out that Jews run the world. It's actually descriptively true. If you believe that, then are you anti-Semitic?
Yes.
No, it depends on what you do with that information, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the issue. Is that like, so if somebody says like, do you think that black people should?
Well, yeah, I suppose it could be pro-Jews running the world, but generally speaking, you don't say they run the world as an accurate description of fact. Because, in truth, nobody really runs the world, quote-unquote. The world isn't ordered that way. But here, give me one quick second. Okay. Sorry, I was being too loud, apparently.
Allowed to go to the same schools as white people, but they believe descriptively that black people are so intellectually different that they ought not to. Does it make you racist to think that they should be in separate schools? Some racist people can hold that belief, but if that belief is actually backed by science, is it racist? I don't know. And that's
Yes, it is. Even if it's backed by science. Crucially, it's not racist because it's bad. It's bad because it's racist for extrinsic reasons. It's racist because it orients us around race as a deciding factor for how we judge and categorize people. Sort of like how a statist is someone who presumes the state in their methodology, a racist is someone who presumes race in their methodology. There's a concept that's becoming common parlance in certain areas of sociology where there's this notion of methodological nationalism, where the notion of the nation state is like a thing that exists as an adequate object of study. that's an ideological orientation around a thing. You're a nationalist, not in the sense of having like an excess of patriotism or an excess of, or a fetishization of some nation or whatever, but in your assumption that the nation is a foundational part of how the world is built up. Like it's just a thing that's there, but that's an assumption. There are people who challenge that. That was not an obvious fact until very recently. And it's not an obvious fact to people who think critically about these questions now. Like it's not no longer racist because you've established that it has a basis in fact. What you've established is that racism has a basis in fact, but specifically racism as an ideological position. Like it quite literally is racism, as if racism was itself like an alternative to nationalism. You've just switched your orientation around. It's now around the race as opposed to some other entity, but you're still affirming the existence of that entity as like a meaningful category of thing. And crucially, you can still say that's bad, because there is a rational basis for racism. Obviously, they reason to it, right? Or they reason about it, rather. They don't reason to all of the reasons that they use to reason to it. That's like the devil's in the details there. But, you know, like it is a system with premises, and that like draws conclusions based off of findings, even if they fudge them. Like there is something there that approximates to like a rational system. The problem is not that it's irrational. The problem is that it tends us, if we accept it, to a position where we are essentially regarding our fellow human beings as property to be manipulated, not as our equals, as like livestock. And the flip side, of course, is we start to regard ourselves only as like better livestock. But it's like fascism. Fascism is a coherent political philosophy. You can read the doctrine of fascism. You can read a lot of fascism into Hegel. You can read a lot of fascism into Rousseau. And you can read like things that are carried forward into fascistic philosophy, going all the way up to like Gentili, which is about the last point at which it had any semblance to coherence. Even though, again, resting on uninterrogated assumptions. Which is one of the reasons for Marx's break from Hegel and Nietzsche's break from everybody. Except for Kant, even though we thought he did. Like it's you can philosophically justify it. It doesn't have the best philosophical justifications as far as political philosophies are concerned, but it's rational. It's perfectly rational. How many political philosophies that involve the state in some capacity are perfectly rational? They all presume the state. They have different attitudes about it. But they make a lot of the same baseline assumptions as fascistic philosophy, which actually was at one point like fairly robust as far as these things go. They weren't. I mean, there was still a kookishness to it at bottom, and that's because it was connected with politics. So of course, it had to do with like trying to brute force ends that you want, not just that philosophically follow from your premises. But like you know, you can write coherently about it, and you can fine tune it. You can make it more or less better. But the result of that is that you make the world into a very dark and hopeless and miserable place, for the sake of those ignoble drives that made you fill in the gaps in your reasoning with the black boxes you needed to get to the end that you wanted. Plus, the etymology of fascism is just simply hilarious, but we won't get into that.
I don't like attacking the morality of the statement, because if the descriptions before are true, the statement itself isn't necessarily bad. That's why I usually fight on the descriptive grounds. Yeah.
I see what you mean there, but so I think another like it's like the race realist example, right? How
Why is it always the angle I don't look at?
You know,
it's not
the
fair.
race realists are wrong on the descriptive ground, but
Yes.
even if they were correct, their prescription still wouldn't follow, because I would still make the arguments that we should still do Oh yeah, because I would still make the arguments that we should still do everything that we can to optimize individuals' potentials within a society, and every person has the capacity to contribute. I mean, except for like a small subset.
Yeah, but the Charles Murray argument. This is the Charles Murray argument because I believe that Charles Murray would agree with that, or at least that's what he says. Charles Murray would say, I don't hate black people. In fact, I love them more than you do because I'm willing to recognize their biological limitations. We need to
No, you don't. You don't love them more than they do. You feel as if you are being more benevolent to them than other people are, but you don't love them. You don't love inferiors the way you love equals. There's a distinction there. That's the issue with Charles Murray. He doesn't love these people. He thinks they are beneath him, and he thinks it is his purview to assign their place in society. The issue with Charles Murray isn't that there isn't coded into his language some positive outcome associated with his analysis and with his prescriptions. The issue is that what motivates them is an extraordinary arrogance and condescension based on unjustified nonsense, or shoddily justified nonsense, if that tastes better going down. Fascism's etymology called me a slur. No, fascism's etymology called fascists a slur.
construct a society where black people can work menial jobs and be able to make a good income, a good living. And you liberals, you progressives that refuse to acknowledge reality, you're the ones forcing them into schools with affirmative action, watching them fail out at 2x the rate and accumulate a whole bunch of debt that they can't pay back, and pretending that you're doing a good thing. So actually, you're racist than me. That would be like the Charles Murray argument. That's why I think the descriptive part is so important. The same prescriptions will not follow from different descriptions. I think the prescriptions will actually look quite different.
Okay, precisely. So then to recenter on what got us into these examples, which was that, okay, the impact statement of saying that this argument leads to whatever morally bad argument, okay, the impact bit. So wouldn't this be an instance where making that impact argument, they kind of just don't care?
Well, it would be one that, if anything, it could reinforce their belief.
Hang on a sec. What did he just say?
Will not follow from different descriptions. I think the prescriptions will actually look quite different.
Okay, precisely. So then to recenter on what got us into these examples, which was that, okay, the impact statement of saying that this argument leads to whatever morally bad argument, okay, the impact bit. So wouldn't this be an instance where making that impact argument, they kind of just don't care?
Well, it would be one that, if anything, it could reinforce their beliefs. Because if at the end I say, like, we need to do things for black people in society that shows that we care, well, if you're like a race realist and you believe in the bell curve, you're like, yeah, Destiny, that's why you're extra wrong.
Yeah, but no. Yeah, but what you challenge them on is why on earth do they situate themselves as the main characters, specifically by dint of their race, to make these determinations? Like, that's a little bit interesting. Who is Charles Murray addressing? I mean, ostensibly he's addressing lawmakers and policymakers and all people like that in that official capacity, but he's certainly not addressing black people and saying, hey, this is, he couldn't be. Because you don't address inferiors that way. In order to make a statement to the effect that you believe this person or this person or this person is unfit for this role in society, you have to assume that you can mentally encompass that so you understand yourself what is fit for that role in society. Charles Murray does not believe that the average black person is his equal in a substantive sense. It is simply, and crucially, like, not like, I'm giving him too much credit. We can just move on. Spending too much time on Charles Murray. I hope Rose Wrist pushes back on that, at least. I don't have high hopes, but I hope.
I do care. You don't care. You just want to create this
Guess that's a
progressive
contradiction.
utopia where diversity and differences and all that shit is irrelevant, but we're actually willing to recognize the science.
Oh,
So
you
your impact
fucker.
statement is true, but like I care about this because I do care about black. I actually don't hate black people. I think they should have their own country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in that situation, if somebody has that initial reaction to it where they were like, yeah, Destiny, that means you probably didn't do good enough on the mechanical grounds.
True.
But I can see. So I guess you're so.
Or
essentially
I
what
thought
you're saying,
I thought we were having this argument. We were saying let's say we skip the mechanical grounds. I thought that's how this started with the Nazi thing, but maybe not. But I do agree with you that like my impact statement can rest
the
on
argument
mechanical.
is that if you don't, you have like something against making an impact statement about Nick personally, like Nick is an anti-Semitic person, whatever. At that point, we still have on the table making impact statements about the effects of arguments and the effects of rhetoric, right? So never forego mechanization ever. So my argument was essentially that maybe would you think it was a good idea if you're having a debate with Nick Fuentes or somebody else, and somebody makes like an anti-Semitic argument is made, and you think it's an anti-Semitic argument because once again you said that it's very difficult to tell whether or not a person is anti-Semitic, but you'd agree it's a whole lot easier to tell whether an argument is, right?
Generally, yeah.
So in that case where you're arguing against somebody who's making an anti-Semitic argument, and you do your mechanization, which you do really well, would you then think that perhaps it's appropriate to add like an impact statement here that focuses on the anti-Semitic impact of this type of rhetoric and these beliefs?
Maybe, yeah. I would just have to see the specific debate. I could conceive of debates where it would be good to do that. And I can conceive of debates where it would be bad to do that. But yeah, there probably is room there depending on the conversation you're having, depending on the exact conversation. Yeah.
So I think that that being a bit more mindful of impact is going to be good for you on two main things. Number one, I personally think that once again contingent on good mechanization, which you are good at, and even in the worst case it's not going to have too much of an impact, that talking about then I use impact in like the general sense, that not the specific one we're talking about here, using impact, now the theory word, along with mechanization is going to make your rhetoric and your argumentation hit a lot harder for a lot of people, and can add that extra pressure towards getting people to reconsider their beliefs in situations where you've done the mechanization well. I will also say that doing that might get some of the people off your back who keep saying that, oh, well, you're not doing enough, you're not giving you're not pushing back enough, you're not calling it for what it is, because you seem to be more focused on whether or not he's correct or not, instead of talking about the weight behind those statements, in the sense that people might think that you give off the impression that somebody who's arguing about rent control and is incorrect is maybe as like wrong as somebody who's arguing for Jewish question in terms of like the moral weight or whatever, and that kind of implication, or that impression I should say, not implication, can leave people with a bad taste in their mouth, so to say.
I think that the impact then would probably matter on the type of thing that I'm talking about. I think there are ways that I could phrase it. I've never tried this before, but I could probably try this in a way. So like one possible thing could be like appealing to the like, if you're wrong about what you're saying, not saying it, but like if you're wrong, it would be pretty catastrophic to be like persecuting a whole group of people, or like having these things, like that'd be pretty shitty, right? Like and then I could probably tie it into other ends too. Like
Here's the problem though. They like that. They like that. They like that the outcomes would be shitty. This is them being tough-minded realists. These are the strong men, forged in dark times, that are willing to make sacrifices. They love the fact that the consequences are dire. That romanticizes it. This guy has no idea. I gotta screen cap that face. That is exactly the face of Steven right here. Just that. Big brain Steve. Just look at this. Just let me blow it up for you. This is beautiful. This is genius voice of a generation.
if women are wrong with how they analyze incels and the way they treat them is pretty shitty too, right? And we could say, yeah, there are probably ways I could do that. It would be very tailored to that argument, like a mechanistic argument. Would be, but yeah, sure, yeah, it probably could be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay. The other thing then is, so there was this Reddit post. Okay. Destiny's incorrect. Nick Fuentes does outwardly meet his definition for Nazi. Why did you ban this person?
Last two paragraphs were incredibly fucking soy, and other comments that he made were actually so unimaginably retarded that if I could figure out this dude's address, I would probably contact the local courts and try to get this guy some sort of like permanent supervision so that he's able to be taken care of. Because I think that if he wanders out into the world, he'll walk into the highway and get ran over by a car. That's how fucking stupid this guy was.
Let's read the last two sentences. So, the fact of Nick Fuentes is a Nazi being the significantly contentious here is a pretty clear warning post that this community has already changed and not for the better. Nazis aren't an enemy anymore. It's people who are so woke that's a real problem here, apparently.
Jesus Christ, that's a stupid statement to you, Steven, you worthless imbecile. This man's a bug. I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing in there. Like, there's no frontal cortex. He's just a zombie at this point. Everything he says is causally downstream from this weird little bubble right in front of him here. It's just... and he can't think anymore. He's gone.
So I assume that the issue...
Wait, can you link me in the post so that I can look just real quick?
What an absolutely weak individual. Like, no, what happened was you were soy raging, Steve. Because someone in your community fucking blew you out. Because you're inadequate.
Yeah, for sure. Nope.
Also, I don't think I deleted the post. I think I just banned the dude. But
I didn't say you deleted. You just banned him. Oh. And then the final sentence was, this community used to give a shit about society progressing into a safer, brighter, and more inclusive future.
Oh, that was the part. Oh, okay, now I remember. Okay, gotcha. Because I thought you were just at the end. I was like, oh, that didn't sound that bad.
But yeah, that was the second to last one I read.
Yeah.
What was it?
Now look at it.
Second to last one. Sorry, I was shooting a troll.
That if I could figure out this dude's address...
Now look at it. Okay. So...
What I mean by this is that...
now... real problem here, apparently. So I assume that the issue...
Wait, can you link me in the post so that I can look just real quick?
Yeah, for sure. Nope.
Also, I don't think I deleted the post. I think I just banned the dude. But
I didn't say you deleted. You just banned him. Oh. And then the final sentence was, this community used to give a shit about society progressing to a safer, brighter, and more inclusive future. So
oh, that was the part. Oh, okay, now I remember. Okay, gotcha.
What was the sentence? Hang on, I'm gonna... Is the transcript ready yet? Yeah, it is. Perfect. Okay. Brilliant. Rose Wrist is so frickin'... He speaks so fast and he mumbles so much. Like I can't hear. I can't understand what he's saying. 3214. This transcript couldn't even catch it. About society progressing to safer and brighter, more inclusive future. Okay, that was the part. That was the part, really? That's reasonable. That's like a... There's nothing wrong with that sentence. That's a...
Because I thought you were just at the end. I was like, oh, that didn't sound that bad.
But yeah, that was the second to last one I read.
Yeah.
This community used to give a shit about society progressing into a safer, brighter, and more inclusive future, so much so that it went and campaigned for politicians who were striving to do the same. Now look at it. Yeah, it was. It was. And you know why I think this hurt Steven a little bit and why he went into a rage about this? Because it is now written in stone that Steven was such a fucking idiot that he became too much of a liability for a politician he was campaigning for as a volunteer effort to not disavow him publicly. That's why. Because he has no fucking discipline. So he has this, like, he likes to think he's like this sort of Dr. House kind of cold, you know, realist guy. But he's just an impulsive shithead. He's not smart. Like, he's not smart. He's a fast-talking, charming guy on stream, but he's not smart. At all. He's just not.
Final one. Now look at it. Okay. So
what I mean by this is that DGG used to positively organize and champion awesome causes, and now we're fighting tooth and nail over something that, in my views, is a well-documented fact, even by the definition of Destiny gave on stream, but evidently before, because blah, blah, blah.
It wasn't meant to mean that we're being brainwashed, more that I think it's sad looking at where this community is now versus where it was. What is unreasonable about this? There's nothing unreasonable about this. If this is unreasonable, then Steven, you can't think anymore. You're done. You're gone. There's no person there anymore. You are literally just your AdSense account. That's all you are. It's like, oh, doing this got me, it went up, the number went up, oh, doing this, number stayed the same. Oh, I guess I'm this now. That's all you are. There's no need to talk about you anymore. You have about as much agency as the YouTube algorithm does.
It wasn't meant to mean that we're being brainwashed. More than I think it's sad looking at...
He has cunning, but he's not smart. He does not have cunning either. A man who has cunning doesn't make the mistakes this man has made and loses as much money as he did and forces himself into this corner. This man is not cunning. The cleverness this guy has is not political cleverness. He is not where he is because he is some master tactician. He's where he is because of fortune, frankly. Somebody was going to end up where he was. Somebody was, inevitably. Other people have ended up higher who are much stupider. If this guy was clever, this guy was purely cynical and was just like a really brilliant cold monster, tell me why Sneeko's out-earning him by orders of magnitude. He's not smart.
Where this community is now versus where it was. What a fucking stupid fucking statement. The idea that like, oh my god, because we disagree on like this categorization.
This is a 34, 35-year-old man who is saying like, oh, I don't like where this community is going. We're taking attitudes towards things that are really dangerous and are really antithetical to the values that I thought we held, and I'm saddened by where our community is going. Isn't that boy? Oh god, like I feel like even that's giving me too much dignity, but I hated doing that voice. But like 34. Give up, Steven. Give up. Just do gaming streams. This isn't your speed. You're not up to this. You don't have what it takes. You're not smart. You have no discipline. You have no capacity for long-term thinking. Keffels. Keffels is a better strategist than you. Substantially so. And let me tell you, Keffels is not a political genius.
Now we no longer organize or champion awesome causes or anything. That's stupid as fuck. Like, in this statement, like, this community used to give a shit about society progressing into a safer, brighter, more inclusive future. So much so that it went in and campaigned for politicians who were striving to do the same. Now look at it. Bro, the campaigning shit failed because I got fucking murdered by other lefties for it. To try to, like,
No, you fuck mook. The campaign failed because you fucked up. Because you went live in front of thousands of people. Thousands and thousands of people. And went, yeah, I think a bunch of rednecks should shoot BLM people if they're rioting in the streets, or should shoot rioters or whatever. You're stupid. You're stupid. You did that. Nobody, like, the person you were campaigning for disavowed you for that. It wasn't because lefties went after you. It's because you made yourself unpalatable.
these things together like, well, we used to go out and campaign for people and now we just love Nazis. Fuck that shit. What a dumb statement. And then his statement about notes was so stupid. I didn't actually ban him for this post. I thought about it when I woke up, but it's like, it's a high effort post. I'm gonna look bad if I ban it. But then he made another comment down the thread that was so stupid, I had to ban him for his own safety and for my safety.
What comments?
Let me see if I can...
Roseworth isn't going to push back on that. Either because he doesn't know, because he's not doing his due diligence, because he's just happy to be here, because he is going to be like a dimmer Steve in the future. And I say dimmer because Steve at the very least knows how to appeal to like a really crass audience, and Rose does not. Or he doesn't care. Or maybe that was the first thing I said. I don't know. I can't remember. This is like, it's becoming white noise at this point. I've listened to, I think, about 9 collective hours of this. Let's be clear here. I want to emphasize this, because the fact that he said that the reason why the canvassing failed was because of lefties attacking him, let's interrogate that, shall we? Because fortunately, he's now famous. He's on Wikipedia as well. He can look up himself and he can learn. Let's zoom in a little bit. It's very wide, so we can only zoom in so much. Political views and activism. I'm going to be reading this off a lot. Political views and activism. No, that's not growing any further. Can we grow it larger than that? No, that's like the limit. Okay, whatever. That's fine. Or I guess if we stretched a screen. Oh, that's better. Can we make it bigger now? No, it just stretches it. Okay, whatever. That's fine. So, political views and activism. In 2020, Bonnell supported the general election campaign of Joe Biden. Following Biden's victory, Bonnell led a canvassing campaign in support of Democratic candidates John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in the 2020 to 21 Georgia Senate runoffs. With the help of approximately 140 volunteers mobilized from Bonnell's online audience, the campaign knocked on an estimated 17,500 to 20,000 doors in Columbus, Georgia, making it one of the larger campaigns of the election. So good, right? That's a massive achievement. Bonnell led another canvassing operation in support of Mark Gudgel for the 2021 Omaha mayoral election. On March 3rd, 2021, Gudgel officially cut ties with Bonnell over the latter's statements regarding riots at the George Floyd protests. In a statement addressing the change, Gudgel said that Bonnell's incitement of violence runs contrary to everything I believe, and have dedicated my career to as a public servant and educator over the past 17 years. So I don't know why I'm stuttering. I think it's because the air is like bothering me right now. Look, 2020, canvassing, it's fine. It's 140 people, it's great. Were lefties turning on him here? No, it's this. Let's look at these statements, just to refresh our memory. No, fine, keep your secrets. Somebody link them to me, the actual video recording. Freaking hate paywalls. Or I'll find it myself. Hang on. Destiny Kenosha comments. Oh, here we go. Sam Cedar apparently covered it. Maybe we can find it there.
Oh God! You were out yesterday. Abe was killed yesterday. Coincidence? Yesterday, and I'll.
No, that's not it. Don't like these guys. Destiny Kenosha shooting fighters. Oh. Here we go. All right, I think this is it. Make this bigger.
The rioting needs to fucking stop. And if that means like white redneck fucking militia dudes out there mowing down dipshit protesters that think that they could torch buildings at 10 p.m., then at this point they have my fucking blessing, because holy shit, this fucking shit needs to stop. It needed to stop a long time ago. Like holy fuck.
Yeah, really, really smart, Steven. Yeah, it was the lefties attacking you that did it. That's what ruined you. That's what ruined your canvassing efforts. Oh, I hope I'm not stuttering because of this. Is this that strong? Oh god, that would be funny. I don't feel like it's affecting me that much. I hope not. I'm noticing my lips are feeling kind of this. Anyways, best not dwell on it. Let's move on.
Fine, this 1 second.
Forest fires everywhere in BC right now. That's what's causing it. We'll roll with that. We'll roll with that. Sorry.
Wait, so was
Yeah,
he
go
banned? He was banned after this. Wait, so okay, before you read that comment, were you like, I'm gonna ban this guy no matter what, or was it that comment that made you believe?
I was close to it because of how dumb the ending statements were. But I think the thing I actually banned him over was the when I saw how absolutely fucking stupid.
I
Hold
think
on.
someone linked it here.
Yeah, 1 second. It is.
It's taking forever to load. Oh my god.
This. The fact that Destiny said that he was uninterested in reading people's quote lists while literally typing Mr. Girl's quotes into a document for his references made me want to Roblox myself. What an unimaginably fucking stupid fucking comment. Fuck that.
From my understanding.
Well, no, because you're making a quote list, you idiot. Like, you're uninterested in reading people's quote lists, but you're composing one. Like, that would be annoying to me too. It's like you're compiling quotes of Destiny in order to, or of Max in order to discredit him, but they have like extensive lists of things that actually, substantiate Max's concerns, and you're ignoring them. That's fair. That's perfectly fair.
The reason you were typing Mr. Girl's quotes was like it was in a conversation, right?
Yeah, I'm typing the conversation to keep track of the argument, not so that I can make a quote hit list.
Okay. So is the
Yeah, but you didn't engage with Max in good faith. You were bullshitting your way through that entire conversation. And then you were saying stuff like, "No, I just don't know what Nick believes. I'm just plumb in the dark about it." Nick's just like, "Hey, Steve, you're my friend. Let's go get ice cream." And I'm not gonna turn down a friend for ice cream. So we went out and got chicken and waffles, and it was just dandy. And wouldn't you know it? Just as a sheer coincidence, it's just an off-color joke. What a normal person does. He asked some random passerby if they were Jewish. Who'da thunk? So just
policy. Do you ban people for being soy?
Usually I ban people when their attacks are like so fucking stupid and so like off the wall, like usually be like people accusing me of like grifting or people doing things like that.
Yeah.
That like I don't see the contribution as being meaningful or positive, and I think it has a really toxic effect of the community when.
No, this toxic. That's really soy, Steve. That's soy toxicity. Toxicity's based.
Those types of comments are made, and then people start to like rally behind it, and it's
Beta.
influential. I just want to like excise over my community. Like somebody's making comments that are that stupid. I'd rather them step out of the way and let somebody more like intelligent or more diplomatic make the decisions instead.
Steve,
because like these types of things just like they take the reins.
You have my blessing to step aside at your pleasure.
But if it's in a situation where like you have 2.8k people upvoting it. Wouldn't you say that it might be a good idea to maybe mechanistically address this rather than going straight for the impact of the ban hammer?
A little bit. I thought about it this morning. The mechanism was the stream today. It's called The Great Purge 2. You probably didn't watch my stream this morning, but I kind of talked about it that like anytime I'm going to do like a big purge, I will talk about it. And I talked about it this morning. It's like, if you're somebody that is very emotionally tied into like the word Nazi and you feel like it's a really important thing, whether we call people Nazis or not, I really just don't want you commenting in my community. And if you want to leave for another community, that's fine. If I bleed viewers off to Max, I'm actually okay with that. He hasn't backstabbed me or anything. I think he's a really cool dude. And if he is more successful because I cut like some of my fan base off and they go to him, I consider that to be a cool thing. That's good for him. So I'm not like salty about like him gaining viewers because I like Max. It's really cool. And if people leave me over this, I'm not like, I don't personally hate people that disagree with me on the Nazi shit. I'm not like, fuck you guys, you're lying. It's just like, I just don't want them in my community. It's just not something that I care to obsess over that thing. And it's detrimental to what I'm trying to push for. And I think that like...
Yeah, I bet you don't care to obsess over unethical things that you're doing that people are pointing out. That could be very inconvenient.
People calling somebody a Nazi or not really doesn't have anything to do with what is a Nazi. It's just the intense emotional attachment they have to that word, which is something that I'm super not interested in. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna and I partly agree with this. I'm not just gonna say like I'm steel mining, so it's like some abstract thing. I'm gonna throw
something about people of Nick Fuentes' description being responsible for some of the worst mass genocides in human history. It puts people a little off kilter.
Whatever on this a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a value in calling a belief for what it is. So I think that in a situation where somebody's making like highly, like anti-Semitic and statements and argumentation and rhetoric that fits within.
You get along with Jordan leaders. I don't know. It's not my type.
Categories and calling things of like Nazi or anti-Semitic or fascist or whatever we want to talk about. I think that there is value in like kind of socially signaling that, hey, don't lose track of it. This is not just another incorrect, but this is not just like, oh, somebody's making a stupid argument. This is just like when, you know, lefties talked about rent control being a good idea, but to signal that, okay. So this is a bad argument. This is a stupid argument, but also this is like a core tenet of one of the most destructive ideologies in human history, right? I think that social signaling is really important, and it's a good way to distinguish between arguments that are just faulty.
Good, Rose.
And essentially differentiating between.
Okay, I'm going to pay attention to this. This is important. So Rose is actually making a good point here, and it's one that Max made, and I want to see how this goes.
Sure. So there's two parts to this. So one you said was there's a value in calling a belief for what it is, and the second is there's a value in socially signaling. The first one I 1 billion% agree with, and it's why I specifically avoid the term Nazi. So like, if I were to ask 10 people for a definition of Nazi, I'd get 11 different definitions, right? Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure this might be an online politics thing.
You get more if you said left, but you have no problem using that term.
How that might be a greater.
If you want, we can start calling people down my Discord list right now. If you want to drag one at a time, we can get Stardust, we can get Dylan. I can start dragging people, and I can ask, how do you think a Nazi is? I'm willing to.
I don't think those people make a case. I think those people would actually be contrary to your case because those people are more inclined than most people.
Even though they're more inclined, I bet they would still. This was a joke that I did when I went on Prime Kai panels and Dylan panels. I would ask lefties, what do you guys think a fascist is? And nobody on the panel actually knew.
Hey Destiny, what do you think a lefty is? I'm really curious. What does he think a lefty is? You asked lefties? Really? Why, because they were on Dylan's panel? Dylan has long hair and he's sort of hippie-ish looking? Is that why they're lefties? It wasn't a kill stream panel? Is that why they're lefties? What the fuck are you talking about?
Even though everybody was using the word, nobody could actually define fascist. So yeah, I think, and if we go into the general population, it's going to be even worse. Like, what is a Nazi? Okay. Oh, I don't know, like Hitler, like Germany. Are there still Nazis? Like a lot of people even see something like that.
Yes, there very much are. In Germany too, by the way, amazingly.
Okay, okay, maybe this might be a bit of an American thing. I know it.
Origin of language for someone with your name. You complain a lot about people not using the dictionary.
At least in Europe, we get actually like pretty, at least, you know, from my education, we got actually pretty
just saying
into like, okay, these are the core tenets of Nazi ideology. We talked about authoritarianism.
Yeah, but you got to be
we talked about the kind of cult of personality that existed. We talked about that. Yeah.
You got to be really careful about that, because if you're I don't know what it's like in Europe, but if you're actually historically studying like what is Nazism, Nick is absolutely not a Nazi. He's actually not even close at that point, because you're missing. Nazis are never going to.
I thought you just said you don't know what it's like in Europe.
Be okay with like fucking Polish people or Eastern Europeans, right? You're either Aryan or you're not. That's one huge point. And then things like Catholicism, fucking forget it, right? If you don't have like state subjugation of religion, there's no fucking way that like Nazis are going to be okay with that. So if you're going from a historical perspective, Nick is absolutely not even.
Was Nazi ideology like pagan, or am I?
I believe that it was.
Nazi ideology was directly influenced by Mussolini. This doesn't matter. This is irrelevant. Like what is the argument here exactly? Like, Nick would turn down a Nazi government because it doesn't put the Great Commission of Christ first? Fuck off. He doesn't care about that.
Was an important part of it that there was a guy that made a bigger Reddit post on that, but like the state religion, or the religion had to be like subjugated by the state. It was a more complicated affair, but they're not going to be okay with like the Catholic Church and shit. Like there's no way that like that intertwinement of like Catholicism or Christianity with the state is going to be like okay. So like from a historical sense, you're now Nick is completely escaping from Nazism, especially with like the Aryan race stuff, right? Like Nick is very. In terms of Nick's like white people thing, he's a very diverse kind of guy. Like there's room for him and a whole bunch of white Hispanic people and everything.
Nick Fuentes, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah.
What you mean there. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. In terms of that, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I recognize the critique you made, and I think it's a good point. So then I'm gonna turn the question on you.
That's not a good point.
How would you distinguish between really like hardline, hyper authoritarian kind of like super like bigoted, like in-group, out-group, alienation and ostracization of certain like and dehumanization of certain like people groups from just like regular conservative rhetoric and argumentation.
Guys, I think we're gonna make it this time.
I don't think I would that much. I think again, like, I agree with your first statement in that there is a value in calling a belief for what it is, and I would just fight on the beliefs. Like, I don't like race realism. I don't like 9/11 conspiracy shit. Like, these are the things I'm going to fight because I think there's a value in fighting against that belief. But the problem is that when I... This is... wait, or go ahead.
To test this.
Yeah,
to test this. So let's say you're having like... Let's say on the presidential... Let's say you had Trump and Biden. Would you not feel differently, or would you not feel like it should be handled differently if the two of them were debating the Jewish question or the two of them were debating rent control?
What do you mean, should it be handled differently? Like, should they have different impact statements?
Shit.
Or
no, do you feel like...
shit. Okay.
Yeah, do you feel like both of those debates and those conversations should just be kind of like handled with the same degree of gravitas, so to say?
Whoa, what is hitting me? How's it hitting me that far?
Like, could you picture in America where you just have...
Oh, it's homing. God damn it.
The answer intuitively is obviously I'm just trying to think of what that would look like. Like, say it's more extreme. Say they're arguing over like what the White House should be painted versus they're arguing over whether or not we should drop nukes on North Korea. It seems to be the case that I just don't know what it would, how differently it would work, or what it would look like. Yeah, go ahead.
This is where I talk about the social signaling, right? Because in this instance, like, if you just have like a debate about why White House can be colored, like, you know, if you have some people think that should be white and some people think it should be, I don't know, fucking beige, you know, there's a degree of like acceptance of both those beliefs. Okay, that, you know, it's kind of fine. I mean, one of them, let's say painting it white gave like a +5 intellect stat boost to the entire country or whatever. So there's still a correct answer, but at the same time, like, it's not, you know, it's not a huge deal compared to like a situation where like you have, you know, parts of the country or people that are like, yeah, we should just fucking nuke everyone who's like our geopolitical enemy. You know, there is a much greater weight in that situation, right?
Yeah, I would say so. But I would say that in these cases, like, you can still do everything that a label would by focusing on the belief. Like, if somebody's talking about like white supremacy, like, I'm going to fight them really hard on white supremacy, but I don't need to ever bring in like outside terms with so much external content into them to be able to fight on that belief. Because I feel like as soon as I do that, it gives my opponent the room to wiggle. Like, if I start attacking Nick really hard on like, bro, like, white majority, how you even measure that? This shit is cringe as fuck. Like, how would you even begin to figure out who's white, who's not? How would it not extend to other things like brown eyes, blue eyes? As soon as I'm like, you're kind of like a Nazi, I've given him oh God, he's like, thank God he's coming out. Okay, I'm not a Nazi because I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want any camps. And that might be true. And now I'm like, fuck. Like, I brought in this external word with all this external content that I've lost control of now. And now what I could do is I go like, well, hold on, wait.
Or you could know your shit. Look at those fucking quote lists. Find out that Nick was actually fully on board with violence being done to protesters, to politicians, to minorities, etc., etc., etc. And then retort with that. But I guess, you know, a little research is too much research for the hardworking Steven.
I'm just defining Nazi insofar as it means now we're fighting over the definitions of the words, different people in different, like, I've muddied the waters.
I recognize this critique that you made before when we talked about the Nazi, and that's when I returned the question to you. But
here's the thing. Destiny's not actually a good debater. He's not. He's terrible. It is so easy to catch him in an inconsistency. Mr. Girl, who I spoke to, who is not a fantastically flexible debater, had him on the back foot the entire time. Steven's not a great debater. You all suck. All of you suck like nothing I've ever seen. None of them are compelling. At all. None of them really change minds. It's literally just a wrestling tournament in which the person who stutters and shudders and looks weak and uncertain loses, and the person who manages to bluster their way through wins, and nobody actually changes their position based on reason. They recognize there's power here, there's weakness here, and they are deferential to the people who display power and strength, and will, like, be more critical and like, hey, you guys are kind of sucky here, da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's what switches people over. President Sunday, who would you say is the best debater in online politics? That's a good question. I'm going to sound this is gonna sound cynical because I've been talking to people about this recently. In terms of lefty-leaning people, I'd say Loner Box. And I think it's been a hot minute since I've seen them, but I remember Socialism Done Left performing extraordinarily well. But I can't. That one's not trustworthy because I've been encouraging him to get back in, which he should because he's good. Vosh could be really good if he got his head out of his ass a little bit and he bothered to meet someone like Ocean Keltoy at his own level, because he could. It's not Vosh. Vosh is not the best debater. Vosh is probably the best at what Destiny does, which is bluster. Destiny's gotten lazy, and he's fine with it. Vosh got lazy, and he's not fine with it, and he got insecure about it. And lately, he made a statement that he's going to start pushing out again, which I take as a very positive thing. I think we might actually start seeing growth in that area. I'm hopeful about that. SDL was fantastic though. Like he had some amazing debates. I think he took that little scandal of his way too hard. And I honestly, like, back then it was like, oh my god. Nowadays, it's the mildest thing. We've come so far from then, and not necessarily in a good way. Vosh is nothing but bluster. Vosh isn't nothing but bluster. Vosh has some areas of competency. And he is genuinely competent in those areas. He has other areas where he's not. And he's not, like, spectacularly bad, mind you. The Elder World, your worst nightmares come true. Oh, that was cool. I like that. He's not spectacularly bad either. But, you know, like a lot of his religion takes, for example, are pretty consistent with what you see in, like, a lot of online atheist circles. It's not particularly... Yeah, Vosh's Moving Castle, exactly. I still think Vosh's Flying Fortress just rolls off the tongue better, but I feel like maintaining the fortress thing would be counterproductive.
So,
anyways, long story short, I think Loner Box and SDL generally. Chud Logic, I don't think is by any reasonable metric a lefty anymore, and he's gotten lazy. So I would at one point say he was actually quite good. I think he has some insecurity because he's surrounded by people who claim credentials. He could be very good if he tried more. I think the problem though is he's frying his brain with just the drama content. That's all he's doing. And he might feel like he can't keep up, which he can. He's actually very smart. I think Chud Logic, honestly, is potentially one of the most savvy people on here. I think he's deluded right now about what he is capable of and what he should do and what the actual use of the online space could be. But that's why it's a damn shame. I'm really frustrated by how he's operating right now. I hope he changes at some point, but it's a hope. President Sunday, where do I look to find SDL's best debates? I don't actually recall. It's been a long time. I think he might have debated, he probably debated Bad Empanada at one point. That would be interesting. But again, I don't even want to send you to his old debates because it wouldn't be representative of him now. He'd be a force to be reckoned with now. He's had a few years to tighten the bolts and get the fear of God in him, so to speak. He'd be ferocious if he came out swinging now. He got one of Sneako's videos demonetized and alerted YouTube to the fact that Sneako's being a naughty boy. So he's making a subtle comeback. I saw him debate on the Break the Rules channel and did good. Okay.
Fuck, what was I gonna say? Before you mentioned the thing about Nazi, just now, what we were talking about. Okay, wait. No, I'm having a brain freeze.
What were we talking about right before Nazi? I'm on YouTube, so we can just
Yes.
go right back. If I was arguing with Nick over something related to white supremacy, and he's saying things about like, well, you know, I might be able to push him on like all these different parts related to white supremacy, and then I say, well, you're a Nazi.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, now I remember.
Okay.
So I agree with what you say, and I agree that there are really big issues with labeling, and that it can give people like wiggle room, and it can lead to you know, people using it just as an impact and then foregoing like the mechanistic thing. It can be used to the point where it's so broad it becomes meaningless. There are all these issues with labels, and I 100% agree with all you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
However, do you think that there's no value to labels in a political settings? Because I would make the argument that due to the way like human psychology works and the way that we categorize things and we recognize patterns in society, I think that there's some level of like increased like accessibility and ease in comprehension and categorization of political beliefs that occurs when you use labels to some degree. And I agree with you in all the critiques that you made of labels thus far, but to throw them out as like a tool for human comprehension entirely feels a bit drastic.
I think that's on you to demonstrate, unfortunately, right? Like if I say to somebody, I really need a car, and then I were to poll people, if I were to pull 20 people on what is a car, if I pulled 20 people on what a car is, I'd probably get like 3 to 5 different types of answers, but for the most part, it'd be like some vehicle.
There's a common thread here for the kinds of critiques that Rose Wrist is fielding and the kinds of critiques that Destiny will accept, and that is he will accept critiques that allow him to remain a main character in the fight against these people so he can justify his continued engagement with them. Damned be the consequences. That's the problem here. President Sunday, will you read Victor's PhD thesis? That is an interesting philosophical question. I suppose the more relevant question is, can I read Victor's PhD thesis? We will see.
With 4 wheels, it has an engine, maybe combustion, whatever. And every single definition that I would get there would be fine. It actually wouldn't matter. Like, there might be subtle disagreements on like what is a car between people, but for the most part, what I need is going to be encompassed by every single definition. So in that sense, like the ontology of a car fits the conversation. That's cool. Okay. And it can be that way for a lot of different things where I am calling forth something. I need a shirt. Oh, okay, some garment that goes right, yeah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are going to be some parts where there's such a divergence of what that word means that when I call it forth, I'm causing more dissonance than consonance. That if my killer thing at the end is like, that's why he's a Nazi. As soon as I've said that, I've rung the lights on like 50 million different definitions, and I've lost control of what I'm trying to say because everybody's bringing in their own external baggage. So I agree with your premise that certain categories are important. You can't just throw them all out. It would be foolish of me to say that. But for these types of political labels, I think the categories have largely come to encompass so many different meanings that I can't use them for conciseness anymore. Because some of those meanings I'm going to want, and some of them I'm not going to want, and I can't
Then don't refer to lefties anymore, Stephen.
What the audience believes at that point about them, yeah.
So would you be in favor of just moving away from using all political labels, like social democracy, social liberal?
I kind of have, yeah.
Libertarian?
Unfortunately, yeah. Because like usually, and I think I even said this like 2 or 3 years ago. I think I even realized this. Where like when I go onto a panel, somebody will be like, "What's your political belief?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a sock dem." But when I say sock dem, I mean actual social democrat who's in favor of capitalism. I'm not a dem sock trying to move towards socialism.
No, it's poison.
And I'm
No.
very progressive, but I still think like I've got to go into like all these different things. Like, fuck, why the fuck did I even say I'm a sock dem, right? And then some people, I think one guy even emailed me and he says, actually, I disagree. Sock dems actually historically tend to move towards socialism. It's like, oh fuck, maybe I can't even use that label. But yeah, I tend to stay away from all political labels. I think I've said over and over again, I just want to fight about let's talk about the policy positions or the ethics positions exactly, rather than
what's awful?
the label stuff.
As a result of me playing this while I'm streaming, I am playing through all of Quake without listening to any of the soundtrack.
Okay. Okay, I can see the argument you're coming from. I would say that, and this would be something that I'm not sure if I could prove, but I most certainly would need to dedicate some degree of preparation to this specifically. I think that it's probably more helpful because I recognize the use of labels and being able to categorize and improve human comprehension, especially like on the fly, where you can get like a
Oh my
general
God,
grasp of like, okay, this is how
this
these
is the
ideas are
worst.
probably gonna like align. This is how this person's beliefs probably gonna look at like in the roundabout ballpark. I still see utility in labels. However, I agree
Fuck.
with all the critiques or labeling of it. But I'm not sure if the correct direction to move towards is fuck all labels. They're done. We don't need to use them at all. Or move towards we need to be like super. We need to be super soy. We need to be super tippy, and we need to be super like anal about making sure people use them correctly in society.
So I would disagree with your first part of that statement, and we would agree on this. When I fuck all labels, they're dumb and they don't work at all. I think labels can be incredibly important.
In political context, my bad.
Yeah, well, no, even in political context, they could be. If these words still retain their original meaning, I could actually use these to like to hardcore reinforce an impact statement. Let's say that all of us agreed what made a Nazi a Nazi. Let's say that there was there were like two definitions or one definition that we all agreed upon. I could do mechanistic arguments against Fuentes where I say like, listen, dude, you believe this and I think it's wrong, and you believe that and blah blah blah, and I think you believe that. Like I could run all of this down, and for my impact statement, I could say like, listen, you know, I've got you on this, and that. Your views are basically that of a Nazi. And like historically speaking, we've seen what happens when Nazis come into power. I don't want death camps. I don't want like the whole world to go into war. Like I could actually use that label. I could call forth that label too, because if I put some pieces of the puzzle together, well, now I can bring in a label that gives me a whole narrative around all of the different individual things that they believe, and I can start to fill in.
You're saying exactly what I was saying, right?
That's the case, though. That is the case. That's the case right now.
But I don't have that label anymore because it doesn't work, because everybody's destroyed, because everybody has so many different personal private definitions for these words.
No, they don't have personal private definitions. I mean, they do, obviously, but generally speaking, the issue is that some people are making gross extrapolations to get to that description, but the description itself still obtains. That's what people mean. That's what's being invoked. If they weren't invoking that, it would have no social force, but it obviously does. That's what you were complaining about before, is that people were trying to lean into the social effect of that label while butchering the content. But it turns out that the social force of it comes directly from its historical consequences. So that's all you need to do, Stephen. You just need to draw a coherent line from Nick Fuentes' stances to those consequences. Bada bing, bada boom. You're there. This is not rocket science. This is very simple.
Can't use that anymore, right? Go.
So that's what I'm asking you about. That's what I'm challenging you a little bit. So I think we both agree on a lot of the descriptive things we've laid out. You do agree with me that there is values in human understanding and comprehension that comes with labels. I agree with you on the fact that labels are being grossly misused and can actually be counterproductive and worse for understanding. And now here's where we talk to, so how do we solve this? What's the prescription we derive from this? Is it that fuck all political labels, we should move away from them and ignore them? Or is it we should keep political labels, but we should make a great societal effort to make sure that we keep the definition narrow, specific, and that it's utilized in a good way?
Yeah, there's a personal one and there's a societal one, right? The societal prescription should be that like men need to stop raping women. But the personal prescription to a woman isn't go into society as though men aren't raping women. You need to fucking be really careful and take care of yourself. And that's the unfortunate reality of where you're at. The societal prescription should be these words have specific meanings. Use them correctly. But personally, I can't wander into the world expecting everybody to act in that same way. I have to go into the world understanding that there's 92 million definitions of communist, Nazi, rapist, transphobe, and that's just the world that I live in, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Sure, but say you're a police officer giving a talk to a classroom and somebody asks, how can I not get sexually assaulted? Don't respond, don't dress like a slut. That's what happened in Canada, which inaugurated the whole slut walk thing. Because when you're in a certain position of authority and you make a prescriptive statement like that, then the message that is sent is not just that here's a practical situation in which there is a cultural problem in which certain people will take certain modes of dress as a license to ignore your non-consent, or to not request consent, or to act inappropriately without taking the correct steps to ascertain consent or whatever. The message also is set that if you don't take these measures, you are making an additional statement by not doing so. Or you are making an additional statement by wearing these clothes or whatever, dressing in this particular way. Because by omitting the other end, you've allowed other people to fill in the gap based upon loading content into the decision to follow the advice or not. It's sort of like here's a good example of what this is. It is perfectly appropriate for a parent in a black family to tell their child that I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't care about what they're telling you in school about the history of oppression or whatever. You need to work your ass off in order to succeed, and you're going to do so, or else you're not going to get like the birthday present you want or whatever. Like that's perfectly reasonable. I don't give a shit about how hard you think it is. You're going to pull through anyways. Why? Because that's advice that gets that's advice you tell your loved ones as somebody who has their interests at heart, who is situated so that it's appropriate for you to have their best interests at heart over somebody else's. That's advice that you would tell them to allow them to make it, because that is required to make it objectively. Here's where it's not appropriate though. It's not appropriate for somebody, for a white person, say, especially somebody who has some like level of comfort or exists in a place where, they're relatively safe. It's relatively wealthy, whatever, which is not always the case, but especially when it's the case. It's not appropriate for them to say, well, black students really just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and affirmative action is a waste of resources and is kind of biased against us. That's not fair. It's perfectly fair for an appropriate actor to say that. It's not fair for an inappropriate actor to say that. And in this case, appropriateness is defined by your relationship with the person you're speaking to. Does that make sense? Like that's the issue here. Destiny is flattening this into, well, people are insisting, and I've fallen into this in the past too. I've stopped, but people are stupid leftists are insisting that just dress, go outside in your underwear in the dead of night and walk down dark alleys, and that's not what they're saying. What they're doing is they're mocking people in positions of authority whose job it is to make sure that your cities and your urban centers and whatever, like human dwellings, are safe for everybody, just by dint of their rights alone. Saying that, yeah, we're not able to protect you, so just just don't show any skin, go full burqa, and you'll be fine. That's how you'll avoid being sexually assaulted. When they're representatives of the state, whose existence is predicated on protecting the rights of its citizens. That's literally why it exists, or it's not really why it exists. It's why it justifies itself, or how it justifies itself. I feel like saying rapist is a vague term is incredibly irresponsible. Yeah. That's something else, though. We'll try to keep it focused. There's a lot going on here. The label has lost all meaning. Oof. Yeah, well. This is the wonderful sewer world of Stephen Bonnell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it happens with all sorts. It'd be nice to be able to say, like, that guy's transphobic. But, like, if I call somebody transphobic, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing. Okay. There's not even anything there. Who the fuck knows? It could mean that they're, like, a really chill, really cool person that just agrees or disagrees with, like, trans women and cis women competing together. Or it could literally be somebody that thinks that, like, trans people are faking it for attention. Both of those people are transphobic. Like, the label has been blown open so much and has so many different definitions.
Yeah, they are. Now, one person is transphobic, and this is, again, nuanced, Stephen. One person is transphobic because they avow a position that is, in fact, literally transphobic, because then it pushes trans people out, or it is antagonistic to trans people insofar as they are vying for access to certain sports, right, to participate under certain modes of identity in certain contexts. The other person is transphobic in a similar way, but they are also additionally emotionally transphobic. They hate trans people. These are not what what you're pointing to is that the term transphobic has a specific meaning that is not tied either specifically to a policy prescription or to an emotionality or to an emotional state. It is an orientation towards a category. You are transphobic because in whatever domain we are applying this to, you are antagonistic to the presence of trans people. That's it. That is it. Or to some category that implicates trans people, to some concept that is essential to talking coherently or productively about trans people, like etc., etc. This is all, again, very elementary. It doesn't take a lot of thought to get to this. It really doesn't. Unless you're not thinking about it. Unless you're just raging about it. Because people who talk about these things in a certain mode from a certain vantage annoy you. In which case, you might be indirectly, or subtly, rather, is a better word, you might be subtly transphobic. In that despite the fact that you avow all these stances, and despite the fact that maybe you allow room for, or maybe even positively avow positions that are pro-trans, so for example, in their involvement in sports or whatever. The way in which you engage with the discourse as a whole has the effect, and maybe you know this, of pushing out trans people, or of causing, having stochastic effects that cause trans people to be pushed out of certain things, or to be more likely to be pushed out of certain things. Maybe. That's the issue with Nick Fuentes, of course, right? Like, everybody knows that you avow an anti-racist stance. Everybody knows that you debate against racists. But that's cold comfort when you are de facto cutting him a check and giving him your audience, and giving him the audience, and facilitating, rather, his access to a much larger audience by allowing him to intersect with yours in the algorithm while he is interacting with someone humongously large, like Sneeko, right?
That it's kind of meaningless at that point, or not meaningless.
Nuance,
I
Steven.
keep saying that every time I've said that I'm wrong, and I retract every time. When I say that labels are meaningless, I'm misspeaking. When I say meaningless, what I really mean is they have so many meanings that I can't apply one in a specific situation like that. That's what I really mean. There's too many meanings.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I say words are meaningless, what I really mean is they are meaningful. In fact, they are so stuffed full of meaning, I don't know what to do with them.
I see your argument. I recognize the analogy there. I could alternatively bring in a separate one, which I know that you've made before, which is that, okay, so is this like a topic that's similar to, rape in society, or is this a topic that might be similar to makeup in society? Where, sure, you have you have this like big social issue, but a good way to resolving it is if people, particularly influential people, like do their hardest and kind of like take a sacrifice, and making sure that they try their hardest to reify these words and these definitions and keeping them like strict within their communities, and hopefully that's going to like seep into society and broadly start influencing it more there. And your allegory to this with makeup would be that the way to make a society where people are more accepting of people, of women particularly, not wearing makeup is if it's influential women celebrities or whatever, or influencers or whatever, start using it less and less, kind of martyring themselves, causing costs to them. In the case of the labels, their communication. But eventually, if enough people start doing it, then you're going to build towards an actual social force that's going to accomplish something. Yeah,
that could kind of be the analogy, but the problem is that I'm not just martyring myself. I would ask an entire political movement to martyr itself, kind of, because for me to go forward into the world and try to use these labels would effectively mean that I'm missing out on so much of my ability to communicate. It's like if this was just like a personal thing for me, like, oh, you should wear different clothes or do something that might make you look better or worse or whatever, then that's like a personal thing. But like in this, I'm actually hampering my ability to do it.
It's their job as well, right? I think this was in regards to like a conversation you talked about, like Lily, who you should play Valorant with, and like Pokemon. You were like, hey, like these are like the type of influences that you just like send it and not wear makeup, and that would come with a big cost to them, right?
Yeah, it could theoretically, but the cost to them isn't seen as like. I feel like it's different with politics because like the only cost to them is a little bit personal. It's not like by not wearing makeup they're hurting all women, or their political movement is like getting weaker, right? Like arguably that's strengthening their stuff. But if I try to force people to use a word in a certain way, It reminds me of there's an XKCD comic. Have you seen the one where it's like there's 8 different cables, there's 8 different standards, but we're gonna make the one cable that makes it so there's like one universal standard, and then the next panel is like now there's 9 cables. That seems to be the thing that happens. Is it like if I were to say like, okay, well we're gonna fight and make this definition, and it's like, okay, cool. Well, you just added another definition to the pool. You don't have the ability to make everybody else, see your shit,
Sure, but I would say so. I agree with what you said. In the difference is that in the makeup example, it's one person hurting themselves versus in the political movement, there's a broader like weight behind you, political weight that's also being compromised because you're hurting your communication. But at the same time, the only way to move towards like a society which labels are used more concisely is for people with political weight to do it, right? Because if you have somebody with no political weight, then nobody's going to give a fuck what they have to say. So
that's true, but I can kind of
it's like there's no way to do without that cost, right? So it's
yeah,
not
but
like
I can kind of do both at the same time. Like I try that, right? Like I do when I hear words used incorrectly, I'll call it out. I just can't go on the other side and use a word the way that I want to use it because it's still used incorrectly so much. But I do try to say when people say like I said that like Vosh is saying that Antonin Scalia and George Bush are fascists. Well, what do you mean by fascist, right? I'll call him out when he says it, but that doesn't mean that I have to start using that word. If the definitions did return, that would be great. But to be quite honest, I would have to look historically. I don't know if that's ever happened with language in the history of the world, or if language has always just gotten more muddier over time. Or actually, I shouldn't say muddy. That's not even really true. Language is evolving over time. Like fascist and racist and all these things still have pretty specific meanings, but the specific meanings are just varied from one context to the next, and they're not like what's written in the dictionary, right? Like transphobe means that like if somebody says somebody else is transphobic, what they're saying is I am like very pro-trans and I don't like the views they have on trans people. That's generally what transphobic means, truly.
Yeah, I think what you said there about doing both at the same time is probably a good idea. So when you're operating within a society and you're communicating with external parties in a world where labels lack meaning, then I can understand why you want to forego them to improve communication. But at the same time, maybe you should work on like some.
This conversation is so boring and completely beside the point. It's just pointless. Nobody is complaining about Destiny not calling him a Nazi on like semantic grounds. They're complaining about him using this pedantic, and not pedantic because particular, pedantic because using particularity to fudge the issue. This pedantic covering over of his cynical association with someone who wants to overthrow the US government and then use the force of the state to disadvantage non-white people in favor of whites, etc., etc., has attempted to do so and will benefit in their capacity to do so by the interaction. That's their issue. It's whitewashing that, which Destiny's using the definition of a Nazi to do. This is all just a massive red herring. And Rose is not... Rose is about a solid 70% as smart as he thinks he is. I'll give him that much credit.
Like an internal, hey, this is the DGG definition. I sound like XUC there, holy shit. DGG definition of Nazi. And we're gonna, as a community, try to stick to this and try to reinforce this as a definition. And then hopefully this is something that spreads and ratifies itself in the future. Because I'm sure at least within the online world, you doing that could have some form of
an impact, puzzle.
But...
Yeah, I mean it can, but again, like there's so much that's outside of my control that like I can I push for like a very specific definition of say pedophile, for instance, but I bet like less than half of my community would actually like consistently use it that way outside of it, and they can't even do it because then they're being forced into like whatever societal bubbles and shit. Like I do try to push for people to be more specific with words. I just it's just hard because I'm fighting against so much externally that I don't want to undermine all of my own arguments having that meta battle.
Okay. I see what it is. All right. Those are the main things I've related to this. Do you have any other thoughts about this specifically?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. One thing. Is there something? Am I gonna be like persona non grata? Am I gonna immediately lose the role I have to join into your thing after asking this? But like, what's going on with the? Aren't you? Come on, you promised the blue hair for the charity thing, right? Like, what's going on with that?
I'm working on it. I'm buying the supplies. Okay, I've got 3 of the
look
8 things.
You have blue lights. You got a blue
coming.
shirt. Like,
Yep.
you got the blue little buddy.
Well, I thought if I turned the blue light up enough, it would be okay. But Jesus,
Is that really all you had?
What do you want? We're on day 4 of this line of argumentation.
Yes, we are. Well, day 5 actually now.
Destiny,
Yeah, what's up? Oh shit, did you have to delete your Twitter?
I have very bad news.
Oh shit, he's about to meme. What's up?
Mr. Beast ratioed me.
Yeah, we saw it.
No.
You got absolutely destroyed on that. You wait, hold on. You can recover though. You know that, right?
How can I beat Mr. Beast?
You got to offer 15,000 for responding to your first tweet.
Bro, they deleted Hustlers University. I can't make any money anymore. It's impossible.
Oh well, then I guess you're fucked.
Start your own hustling. That's what hustling's about.
Yeah,
Start
bro.
your own Hustlers University. Make money. Startups. Let's
Yeah,
go.
where's your Hustle University, bro?
Here, I'll give you a hustle. Can you give me your Omni Liberal Twitter account?
What the hell is this? What am I listening to?
No, fuck
Wait,
you.
that's the other liberal.
Okay, enough of that. That's really fucking annoying. Ugh. Well. Well done, Rose. You simped for him in the end, at least. I'm sure Daddy will still let you get your cookie once in a while. These people. Just the absolute worst. What is this? Is this something I can interact with? No, I don't think so. Alright, what the hell am I doing here? Oops. Okay, I need to find health. This is not good. Need to check the Nomos map, see where Rose Riss is at. I've lost all respect for the kid. It's unfortunate. Really. It's also not unfortunate, he is genuinely insufferable. But by the same token, it's like... just another person ruined by the space. It's just, it kind of sucks. Okay, I think that's what we wanted. So we hit the... right, of course, okay. So we've opened something. What have we opened? He's been holding water for Destiny for a while. This is what I think happened. Vosh did his Fortress Arc, which was a stupid decision. And as a result of doing his Fortress Arc thing, he lost the capacity to facilitate the kind of growth that makes Destiny appealing to streamers looking for a conversation. Because God knows it's not because he himself is so sophisticated and has just so much to offer intellectually, because he really doesn't. He's lazy, he doesn't care. He's actually one of the more unsophisticated people in this space, as far as people who have any kind of like substantial following. I'm gonna die here. Oh fuck, yes I am 100% gonna die here, unless I'm really careful and smart, which I'm not. Okay. Oh, is that guy gonna come alive? Why is he dead? Oh, because I shot him through the door. Yes, of course. Haha! Ow. That was a mistake. I need to not use this. That thing has killed me so many times. The splash damage in this is just unreal. Here's the thing, Rose Wrist has the capacity and has demonstrated the capacity to be an extraordinarily useful and industrious member of the online politics community. That's what we'll call it. The problem is that he is also a duplicitous clout shark who will change his positions like a mercenary, or tailor his positions rather like a mercenary, depending on who benefits him most in the moment, which is ill-advised because moments pass constantly and very quickly, and somebody who is out of grace one week is not necessarily out of grace the next week, and vice versa, with respect to those who are in grace. So he has decided that it is in, sorry, this is actually starting to hit me now. It is in his best interest to cozy up to Destiny, because Vosh is not doing the kind of engagement that facilitates really quick growth for people in his cohort, which, until recently, Rose Wrist was. I hate these Yeti guys. Did I kill him? Nope. Die. Die. Do you think Rose Rips was being duplicitous in his last conversation with Vosh? Insofar as he was acting as a foil for Destiny in order to curry Destiny's approval? Yes. I think the duplicitous part was him coming to Vosh as somebody who had, who Vosh should expect to be a friend. Because he is not. He is very much not. And that's one of those things that I have a big problem with. I don't think he's a trustworthy figure, though. I think, I think his decisions this year will haunt him later on. That's my expectation. We are headed for dark times. How dark, I have no notion. But we're always headed for dark times. And so what's going to happen is that the negative consequences of everything that has been done and said now will come to fruition. And then what will happen is people will have to account for the things they did needlessly. Because the fact of the matter is, none of us really knows whether or not... God damn it. Case in point. None of us really knows what the consequences of our decisions and our political actions and whatnot will be. And so all we have to fall back on to justify ourselves in the end is what were we trying to do, and what were we trying to do to attain it, and what did we compromise along the way? And what motivated those compromises? Because at the end of the day, the ends don't really justify the means, because means never really need to be justified. The people who use them need to be justified. Truly. The means stand as efficacious one way or the other, or efficacious or inefficacious, and they are what they are. There's not really a complex discussion to be had about them ultimately on an ethical level. What matters is what were you actually doing by adopting those means? And if it comes out that the only explanation for why Rose Wrist made the moves that he did, and of course there's always level of plausible deniability here, but I am not so generous. If it comes out that the only reason that presents itself is for why Rose Wrist made the decisions that he did, or why Destiny made the decisions that he did, is that there was some financial incentive to do so, then the negative consequences condemn you in a different way than if they were simply the result of honest accident. You did what you thought was right, and you turned out to have miscalculated. Because you can forgive a person as still being good in their orientation, if that's what happened. But if they allowed the worst to prevail over the better, for the sake of something deeply noble, like growing a YouTube channel, or a Twitch channel, well, that just hits you different. You know? You don't think that's a good person afterwards. You don't think that's a salvageable person afterwards. You think, damn, it's a right shame that person was around at that moment. It would have been better if they weren't. The issue with means that they change the ends you get. Yeah, but you can't see the ends. They're ends, right? We're not at the end. The issue with ends is that we can't perceive them. They're ends. They're at the other side of our actions. Why can't I... There we go. Actions are the manifestation of your will in the world, not ends. I hate that I'm saying that while somebody woke up and is walking around. That's very awkward. Because they know how stupid I actually am. I have yet to hear a single sound effect in Quake. I've only been listening to Dire Dire Ducks. Let's see here. I'm getting a complex. I feel like I'm too scary for people. I've now invited multiple people on to express their grievances directly to me on stream. And so far, only Power Bottom Politics has had the balls to do so. Nice fellow, that one, actually. I'll probably talk to them more. But you're always trying to get to the ends. Yeah, but that... Here's the thing, though, right? Like, to a certain extent, if your means are undermotivated, which is really what I'm getting at, then the ends that you intend are implied. Especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a history that would suggest that you would not be perceptive of alternative means. Because if you take the painful route to the best, or the less likely route to succeed, and you can be expected to recognize it as such, then it stands to reason that that was either not your true intention, or you had competing ones. You know? If Roserus did things, or made decisions, that could easily be perceived by a reasonable actor of roughly his intelligence, whatever we gauge that to be. If he pursues ends that a reasonable person would expect to be less than ideal compared to available alternatives, oh, that felt good, then it is reasonable to conclude that he had a reason for making that decision. And now you run through the possible list of reasons. And among them you find, oh, well, he directly stood to gain financially from this. Or he stood to maintain a friendship that kept him within a certain level of social prestige, got him a certain amount of attention. I mean, look, for God's sake. I do this. I'm not talking to all these people all the time because of their intellectual qualities. I mean, some of them I do. But, like, am I dealing with Destiny because he's smart and interesting? No, I'm dealing with Destiny because he's at the center of discourse. And it's also important politically, but it's also like, I'm talking about people I can affect. And I am, of course, incentivized to talk to people about people I can affect. Because if I don't talk about people I can affect, I will be ignored. And if I am ignored, well, then I lose my capacity to speak altogether. It's not purely for money, of course. Money is a means to free myself to do the thing that I want to do. But it's also for money for that reason. So it's like, there's a balance. Like, if I was doing this for money, I made some really terrible decisions, but I would be lying if I said that I don't take account of that. You have to. That's the whole that's the work part of this, unfortunately. Or I guess more the labor part. I consider my work to be the, Am I gonna die if I fall from here? What if I land on that health pack? I'm gonna try. Ha! Okay, I'm alive. Good. Can I crouch? No, I can't. Can't teabag it. Oh well. We can't have everything. What the? Thank you for that. Oh, is this the end? No. Oh, it's too hopeful. I wonder if the erudite debate will happen. Well, she sent that to me in DM, so she is counting on a certain amount of plausible deniability. However, I still have the screen cap statement by her. I don't necessarily require her present to break down her credibility. Or what little of it is, or what little of it exists. Erudite is awful, though. That is a person with zero... Not even a lack of principles. I can understand a person with a lack of principles. And what I mean is, I can respect a person who is motivated by love of some cause, or some person, or something, who will do anything to see that prevail. I can understand that. That's a thing I can have some regard for. Erudite is only in it. Only in it. For, just to be a famous person with a Twitch stream. That's it. That's the game. That's all she's in it for. And she's a fraud. She postures as having expertise and knowledge in areas she has none in. And, yeah. I have no respect for that. That person is antithetical to me at an existential level. She's a bit low on intelligence, I think. Well, then, she's been honest in at least one respect. It's a hell of a thing to have 14,000 subs get to your head. Oh shoot, I had to shoot that, didn't I? Maybe I can still... Did I get it? I did. You do. Fuck. Yes. Haha! Stop that. Okay. Well, now I've got no armor. Brilliant. So you're saying you should try to commit as few violations as reasonably possible when pursuing an end and take the best option available in regard to the means? Well, if you don't, then what's motivating you not to, right? Destiny reminds me of a friend who got caught flirting with women on his phone, and instead of dealing with it, he went on a moral crusade against hookup culture. That's an interesting, retort. I'm gonna die up here, aren't I? Oh, yes, I totally am. No, I totally am not. Wait, I totally am. Fuck. Yes! Oh, I thought I was gonna go through that for a second. Goodness, it's late. Okay, I'm gonna finish up this level and I'm gonna wrap up. Whether I live or die. Oh, god damn it. I hate that thing. Okay, that's okay though. What do I have? Oh, I've just got rockets, don't I? And it's immune to rockets. Or it's like... Well... That's that. Alright, everyone. We went, here, I'll save here. I should save from here, I suppose. Seems to only like it when I do that. I'm gonna run ads and then, we'll call it for tonight. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.